Our boy Tojo Manabu is currently serving 30 years for a murder he did not commit. He sits in the prison cafeteria staring at his meal. The light is completely gone from his eyes. Suddenly, a scarred inmate steps up and starts screaming in his face. His skinny sidekick laughs and eats Tojo's food right off his tray. They slam their hands on the table. They demand he finishes every last grain of rice or else. But Tojo is not afraid. He is furious. He kicks the table straight up into the bully's chest. Then he vaults over the metal edge. Pure murderous rage takes over. He dives through the air holding a pair of metal chopsticks and plunges them straight into the scarred guy's neck. Blood sprays across the room. The inmate collapses in absolute agony. To understand how a normal college kid ended up stabbing someone in prison, we need to rewind 2 weeks. Tojo is at a karaoke bar with his friends. He watches the girl he likes singing her heart out. She steps out to use the restroom, and he decides this is his moment to confess. He follows her into the hallway. He stops her and admits he has liked her for a long time. He asks if she will go out with him. She looks incredibly awkward. She politely tells him she does not want a boyfriend right now. She turns and walks away. Our guy is completely crushed. He copes the only way he knows how. He chugs beer after beer in a dark room. The party continues around him while he drinks himself into a stupor. Eventually, he passes out face down on the table. When he finally wakes up, the room is pitch black and completely empty. He opens the heavy door and steps into the hallway. Yellow police tape blocks the corridor. A hand suddenly grabs his shoulder. An officer spins him around and screams that he is under arrest. Several cops tackle him to the ground while he begs to know what is going on.
We have secured the suspect in the Karasawa Mio murder case.
Tojo freezes. They drag him past the tape while he screams that it is impossible. The interrogation is a nightmare. He cries and defends himself for hours, but the police just show him photos of her battered body on the floor. Months later, the judge drops the hammer. 30 years for rape and murder. The victim's parents scream from the gallery. They want the death penalty. Tojo just stares at the floor. He cannot understand how this is happening. Suddenly, his own father stands up and shouts back. The two families clash right in the middle of the courtroom. Guards rush in and tackle Tojo's dad to the floor. Tojo screams for them to stop. His father looks up from the ground and promises to prove his innocence. But justice never comes. Instead, Tojo arrives at the darkest prison in the country. His new cellmates are massive block-shaped monsters. They surround him immediately. The cell boss asks what he did to get in here. Tojo stammers in fear. Another inmate smacks him in the back of the head. He drops to his knees and cries that he was framed. The boss orders him closer, then violently kicks him right in the stomach. Tojo crashes across the concrete floor. The boss smiles and calls him a rapist. He grabs him by the hair and punches him again. He tells Tojo that guys like him are the lowest scum on earth. He orders his men to string the new kid up. Two massive guys grab Tojo by the arms. They bind his wrists with thick rope, and the real torture begins. They hang him from the cell bars and take turns beating him like a punching bag. His face turns into a bloody pulp. The boss grabs his hair and promises things will get way worse if he snitches. Tojo just stares back in silent terror. Sometime later, a guard pulls him out into the hallway, but he is not here to help. He bluntly announces that Tojo's parents just died in a car crash. A dark void swallows our boy whole. The guard impatiently asks if he has any other relatives to send commissary money. Tojo blankly whispers that he has no one. The guard sighs and walks away. He considers the kid a lost cause, which brings us back to the cafeteria. Tojo carries his food tray with dead eyes. He has absolutely nothing left to live for. The scarred inmate screams in his face. The skinny lackey steals his food. They order him to eat every bite while treating him like dirt. Something inside Tojo snaps. He hears the girl rejecting him. He hears his father promising to save him. He remembers the brutal beatings in his cell. His mind fractures. He grips a metal chopstick tight enough to break it. The bully mocks him one last time, but Tojo refuses to die here. His eyes fill with deadly resolve. He decides to take his revenge on anyone who gets in his way. The bully freezes in terror. Tojo launches himself like a missile and buries the chopstick right into the guy's neck. The inmate screams as blood pours through his fingers. The skinny sidekick panics. Two other gang members rush in to jump Tojo. They charge with fists raised, but Tojo intercepts them and violently slams the scarred guy into the tiles. He is fully committed to taking everyone down with him. He beats the injured man mercilessly. Blood paints the cafeteria floor. Multiple guys try to pull him off. The skinny lackey grabs Tojo from behind. Tojo glares back with glowing red eyes. He looks completely demonic. Prison guards finally rush in. One grabs Tojo by the shoulder and backhands him across the face for causing a scene. Tojo stares at the ground with empty eyes. The guard scrambles to get the bleeding inmate to the infirmary before he dies. Suddenly, Tojo roars like a wild animal. He breaks free and sprints across the room. The guard panics. He realizes Tojo is aiming straight for the concrete wall to end his own life. Everyone dives to intercept him right before impact. They pin him to the floor. He thrashes and screams in pure agony. Sometime later, an IV drips steadily. Tojo lies unconscious in the infirmary. The doctor tells a guard the kid has lost the will to live and refuses to eat. An elderly inmate sweeps the floor nearby. He tells Tojo not to throw his life away. He asks who will clear his parents' names if he dies now. Tojo's eyes snap wide open. He bolts upright and demands to know what the old man means.
I have heard about your case. Ever wonder if your parents really died in a traffic accident?
The old man heavily implies it was no accident. He claims they were murdered. Tojo grabs him by the collar. He demands to know how he could possibly know that. The old man asks Tojo if he actually killed the girl. Tojo firmly denies it. The old man points out the obvious. If he was set up, his parents were probably silenced for finding proof. The harsh truth hits Tojo like a truck. He pictures the bloody car crash. It suddenly all makes sense. Tears stream down his face. He clenches his fists and declares he cannot die until he gets revenge. The old man smiles. He notes that Tojo is too weak right now, especially since the cell boss has already sworn to crush him. But the old man likes his guts. He promises that if Tojo survives the boss, he will help him break out of prison. A loud thud at the door interrupts them. The old man tosses a thick book onto the bed. He tells Tojo to read it when he has time.
Human anatomy and vital points.
Tojo asks for his name. The guy says to just call him Old Man Tsuchiya. He promises to meet again if Tojo proves himself. A furious guard busts into the room. He screams at Tojo for casually reading after causing a massive headache for the staff. He orders Tojo out of bed. He is getting a month in solitary confinement. The guard violently shoves him into a pitch-black cell and tells him to rot. The heavy iron door slams shut, but Tojo clutches the anatomy book to his chest. He no longer wants to die. He only wants blood. 15 days later, a guard unlocks the solitary cell and tells him his time is up. The guard looks inside and freezes in utter bewilderment. Tojo steps out. He is completely shredded. He walks down the hall carrying his shirt over his shoulder. The guard nervously asks what he was doing in there. Tojo smiles and says he was just reflecting on his sins. Out in the exercise yard, inmates gather in their usual groups. Tojo steps onto the dirt. The skinny lackey spots him instantly. The lackey alerts his crew. A hostile mob immediately surrounds our guy. Tojo just stares them down with a dark grin. The massive cell boss, Goriki, steps up behind him. He points to a fresh scar on his temple and promises to pay Tojo back 100 times over. He orders his gang to attack. 3 guys rush forward. Tojo easily blocks them and delivers devastating counterpunches straight to their faces. He studied that anatomy book well. Goriki screams at his men to fight harder. Tojo just smiles. He knocks back another inmate like a ragdoll. Then he pivots hard and launches himself directly at the boss. Goriki looks up in pure shock. Tojo tackles him with so much force they smash right through the roof railing. He screams for the boss to die. They plummet over the edge together. The lackeys stare over the broken railing in horror. The 2 men crash violently onto the concrete below. Tojo mounts the bleeding boss and raises his fist for a fatal blow. Guards sprint across the yard. One screams for Tojo to stop. He warns him that killing another inmate means an instant death penalty. Tojo's trembling fist stops mid-air. He cannot die before he finds his parents' killer. He slowly stands up. The watching inmates are utterly terrified. They realize this kid is completely unhinged. Tojo walks away in cuffs, realizing his status in the prison has entirely shifted. Back in the infirmary, a guard tells him the boss was transferred to another prison. The fall completely paralyzed his lower body. He will be in a wheelchair for life. The guard clears him to return to the general block this afternoon. Tojo knows nobody wants to mess with a crazy bastard who does not fear death. Tsuchiya steps into the room with a subtle smile. Tojo demands the escape plan. He survived, just like they agreed. Tsuchiya tells him to create a diversion first. He leans in and whispers his plan. He needs Tojo to start a massive riot. Tojo asks how he can trust him. Tsuchiya explains that the iron grate in the kitchen sewer is loose. He promises to remove it entirely so Tojo can slip away during the chaos. He tells Tojo to check it himself if he doubts him. Tojo shakes his head. He refuses to hesitate. If it gets him out, he will do anything. He confidently agrees to start the riot. A guard escorts him back to his cell block. Inside, the skinny lackey and the blonde inmate panic as the door opens. Tojo steps in, projecting pure menace. He asks if anyone wants to settle the score for their old boss. They wave their hands frantically. They claim they hated the guy and are glad Tojo crippled him. They grovel instantly, swearing loyalty to their brand new boss. Tojo sits on the bunk as the cellmates bow down. He takes control of the entire block without throwing a single punch. At lunch, Tojo sits at a table like royalty. His new lackeys eagerly feed him pieces of their own meals. He has to politely tell them to stop because he cannot eat that much. But across the room, other inmates are whispering. A massive bearded gang leader named Kai glares at him. He is insulted that Tojo has not paid his respects yet. One of Kai's subordinates offers to go settle the tension and bring the newbie into the fold. Kai smirks. If Tojo joins them, this entire block becomes their territory. The lackey marches over and aggressively taps Tojo's table. He introduces himself as Kai's man. He complains that Tojo took out Goraki without running it by them first. Tojo glares up and asks if that is a problem. One of his cellmates whispers a frantic warning that Kai is not someone to mess with. Tojo glances across the room at the bearded leader. Kai gestures for his lackey to teach the kid a lesson. The subordinate slams the table and screams that there are rules in this place. Tojo instantly shatters the guy's nose with a brutal punch. Kai's eyes go wide in shock. Even Tojo's cellmates cannot believe it. The lackey falls backward, clutching his bleeding face and screaming for help. Kai shoves his table away and rises in pure fury. Tojo steps calmly into the aisle. The entire cafeteria murmurs anxiously. A gang war is about to pop off. Kai stomps over, sizing the kid up. They face down right in the middle of the room. Kai smirks and says he has never seen someone so cocky. Tojo smiles coldly and tells him to look closer. Before they can throw hands, a guard screams for everyone to sit down. Kai scoffs. He promises to settle this during break time tomorrow and walks away. Tojo's skinny sidekick bursts into panicked tears. He shakes Tojo by the shoulders, wailing that Kai will bring his whole crew to wipe them out. Tojo snaps back. He calls them spineless idiots and declares they will just take everyone out together. The cellmates fall completely silent. The skinny lackey drops to his knees. He apologizes and lets out a passionate roar. He swears to fight like his life depends on it. The rest of the cell block pumps their fists, entirely fired up by their new boss. That night, the prison is dead quiet. Tojo slips out of his bunk. He quietly ties his blue bedsheets together into a makeshift rope. The next morning, the recreation yard is packed. 2 guards patrol the perimeter. An inmate approaches them and bribes them with a pack of cigarettes. They happily accept and step away from their posts. Kai watches them leave. It is go time. Tojo sits calmly against the wall with his men. They spot Kai's gang marching over. Tojo gives a confident smile and tells his crew to show their resolve. Kai's gang charges across the dirt. Tojo's men step up and start swinging. An absolutely massive brawl erupts in the courtyard. From a distance, the bribed guards finally hear the screaming. One drops his cigarette in panic. They blow their whistles and rush toward the raging riot. Dozens of inmates are beating each other senseless. Kai stands in the middle of the chaos, grinding his teeth. A guard brandishes his baton and shouts for order. He frantically calls for the security team. The diversion is working perfectly. Kai's subordinate looks around the bloody courtyard. He suddenly realizes Tojo is nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Tojo sneaks into an empty maintenance area holding a bundled bag. Sachiya is waiting with a wrench. He praises Tojo's work and tells him to hurry. The old man leads him through the deserted kitchen. He lifts a heavy iron grate right out of the floor. Tojo stares down into the dark sewer shaft. They descend into the gloom one after the other. The heavy grate slams shut above them. They wade through the murky, vile water. Tojo covers his nose to block out the overwhelming stench. Rats scurry past their ankles in the shadows. Finally, Tsuchiya announces they have arrived. Daylight filters through a barred iron gate at the tunnel exit. Tojo asks how they are getting through solid iron. Sachiya smiles and claims he rigged the bars to come loose during previous trips down here. He tells Tojo to just give the metal a hard shove. Tojo steps up and places his hands on the gate. He strains against the heavy iron. Without warning, Tsuchiya buries a combat knife directly into Tojo's back.
You wanted to die, right? I am granting your wish.
Tojo stumbles forward into the wall. Tsuchiya turns around and easily squeezes through the loosened bars. He never planned on bringing dead weight, but a hand suddenly snaps out and grabs his ankle. Tsuchiya gasps and looks back in total disbelief. Tojo stands tall, glaring down with icy composure. He reminds the old man that unwarranted kindness is always suspicious. He rips open his shirt. Thick magazines are tightly bound around his torso, blocking the knife completely. Tojo yanks Tsuchiya back into the dark tunnel. He declares he is entirely done trusting people. Tsuchiya snickers and readies his blade for a real fight. He swings wildly in the narrow space. He taunts Tojo, promising to kill him for real this time. Tojo swings his bundled cloth sack, bursting it open. A dense cloud of white lime powder explodes straight into Tsuchiya's eyes. The old man drops his knife and screams in burning agony. The chemical sizzles against his face. He demands to know where Tojo got it. Tojo calmly reveals he knew the old man scored a knife and acid 2 weeks ago. Another inmate snitched. Tsuchiya lunges blindly, roaring that he is taking Tojo down with him. Tojo holds up a glass bottle of sulfuric acid. He pickpocketed it from Tsuchiya right before they entered the sewer. Tsuchiya's face contorts in pure, unbridled rage. He charges forward completely unhinged. Tojo counters with a devastating knee strike straight into the old man's face. Tsuchiya blasts backward and crashes hard onto the sewer floor. Tojo stands over his defeated body. He admits he used to be incredibly naive, but I will not make that mistake twice. Our boy pins his target to the sewer floor. The guy tries to talk tough, but Tojo is done playing. He thrusts the combat knife straight into his chest. Blood sprays everywhere. Tojo stands over the lifeless body as steam rises from the grate. He looks down with completely dead eyes. He thanks the corpse for making him stronger. He steps out of the drainage pipe into the shallow river water. The sun is shining on the distant city skyline. He takes his first deep breath of open air in months. Then he rips open his prison shirt to reveal chunks of raw meat tied to his chest. He cuts the bandages away and dumps the meat into the river. Standing in the reeds, he glares back at the prison silhouette. He is coming for everyone. Meanwhile, in a busy diner, a bunch of cops are talking about the massive manhunt. The older cop Katsuragi says they are looking for 2 escapees. He mentions an old pro and a young guy who was found burned to a crisp. A young man in a black cap sits quietly in the next booth eating his food. He smirks. He remembers tearing his inmate badge off in the sewer. He poured sulfuric acid right over the corpse. The badge dissolved right next to the charred body. The cops keep talking. The younger officer says the dead kid was in for murder anyway, so it serves him right. But then Katsuragi drops a massive piece of intel. He says the kid might have been innocent. His parents supposedly stole an autopsy report to prove it. Under his cap, Tojo freezes. His eyes go wide. That report is the key. That has to be why the mastermind had his parents murdered on the street. He finishes his food and stands up. As he walks out, Katsuragi turns around. He gives the kid a friendly warning to stay safe because there are escapees on the loose. Tojo does not even look back. He just says he understands and walks out the door. Later that night, a blonde waiter is whistling on his walk home. Tojo trails him from the shadows. The second the guy turns into a dark alley, Tojo grabs him from behind and puts a blade to his throat. He demands to know who gave the order to frame him. The waiter is terrified. He asks if his attacker is a buddy of Tojo. The waiter tries to act tough. He warns our guy to stop digging unless he wants his limbs smashed like Yuji Suzuki. That name hits Tojo like a truck. Yuji was his best friend. Enraged, Tojo plunges the knife straight into the guy's thigh. The waiter screams and collapses. Tojo towers over him and demands to know who hurt his friend. He crouches down with a merciless glare. The waiter refuses to talk, so Tojo stabs him again. He gives him one last chance. The terrified waiter finally cracks. He swears he does not know the main boss, but he says Rei Amano paid him to lie in court. Tojo recognizes the name. She was his dead crush's best friend. He demands her location immediately. The bleeding waiter spills everything. She is working at a nightclub right now. The guy begs for his life, so Tojo ties his wrists and ankles with duct tape. He wraps tape across the guy's mouth to muffle his screams. Then he drags him to an abandoned dry well on the outskirts of town and kicks him over the edge. Tojo tells him to sit tight. If he dies trying to find this girl, the waiter is going to starve to death down there. Across town in a quiet yard, a heavily bandaged man sits by a campfire. This is Yuji. Both his arms and legs are wrapped up. He pours beer onto the dirt. He is weeping because he could not avenge his best friend. Tojo watches him from behind a wooden fence. He remembers Yuji stepping up to defend him from bullies back when they were kids. Yuji slumps forward and cries out in grief. Tojo pulls his cap down. He refuses to drag his friend into this mess any further. He will settle the score alone. Down in the neon nightlife district, he stakes out the glowing entrance of the club. Rei Amano walks out laughing with a wealthy customer. She bows as the guy drives away. She checks her watch and heads down the sidewalk. Tojo shadows her closely. He pulls his knife and closes the distance. He is right behind her when her phone suddenly rings. She turns around, causing Tojo to smoothly step past her into the crowd. He listens in as she complains to someone about waiting at their usual spot. She walks into an internet cafe. Tojo knows the owner is a violent thug, and this is probably a meetup. He buys a soda from the vending machine and prepares to breach. Amano is waiting in a private gaming booth. Tojo walks right in, and she turns around angry at the intrusion. He just holds out the soda can. When she reaches for it, he moves with lightning speed. He snatches her wrist and pins her to the counter, pressing the combat knife into her neck. He tilts his head up so she can see his eyes. She recognizes him instantly and goes pale. He demands to know why she framed him. She stammers that the whole conspiracy cost over 10 million yen in bribes. She is just a broke hostess. He glares at her and asks who pulled the strings. She warns him to run before the club owner gets there. Tojo just presses the blade deeper. Blood trickles down her neck. He gives her 3 seconds to talk. She completely breaks down and screams the name Yoshida Koki. Tojo remembers the silver-haired rich kid. Just then, heavy footsteps approach the door. The bodyguards are outside. Amano begs Tojo to leave before he gets killed, but Tojo says his life ended a long time ago. The club owner is right outside the door. Tojo tells her all he has left is revenge. He forces her to pick a side right now. She scribbles a phone number on a scrap of paper and shoves it into his hand. He looks at the digits. He promises to call tomorrow and warns her not to cross him. The club owner in a bright pink suit is walking down the hall with 2 giant bodyguards. Tojo calmly walks right past them. They brush shoulders in the narrow corridor. The boss stops and looks back. He thinks he recognizes the face, but Amano quickly distracts him from inside the room, and Tojo vanishes. Back in his dark safe house, Tojo stares blankly at the ceiling. He remembers the karaoke party, Yoshida whispering to his crush Mio, Tojo passing out from the booze, Yoshida leading Mio down the hallway by the hand. He screams Yoshida's name into the empty room. He grips his bedsheets with white knuckles, shivering with rage. The next day, he hits a payphone. He tells Amano to meet him at the Riverside Park tonight. She agrees solemnly. When night falls, she is standing alone under the streetlights. Tojo walks up behind her. He demands to know exactly how his parents died. She looks at the ground guiltily. She explains his parents managed to get a copy of the real autopsy report to request a retrial. Yoshida panicked. He had them run over to make it look like an accident. She starts crying and apologizing. Tojo slaps her so hard she falls over. He grabs her by the collar and screams in her face, demanding to know what was in the report. She looks up at him with sheer pity. The report showed Mio had DNA from 3 different men in her system. None of them were him. Tojo freezes in shock.
Mio, whom you thought was a goddess, was just a toy to them.
Amano explains that Mio willingly took a massive stack of cash to entertain Yoshida and his rich friends. They forced drugs and alcohol down her throat. The dose was way too high. She overdosed right there on the couch and stopped breathing. The men panicked. Tojo looks at the ground completely shattered. His perfect image of her was a total lie. He asks why they framed him. Amano says they needed a fall guy and used the fact that Tojo had confessed to her earlier that day. They made it look like a rejected lover snapped. She admits she was threatened into cooperating. Tojo cracks his knuckles. His entire body radiates a deadly aura. He is going to crush Yoshida. But Amano warns him the rich kid has 8 elite bodyguards, half martial artists and half special forces. She begs him to abandon revenge and run away. Tojo refuses. He says he will spare her life for telling the truth, but she is not going anywhere. He forces her to follow him down a dark path. He says he cannot risk letting her go home until this is settled. He takes her smartphone. Then he roughly grabs her by the neck and shoves her forward. He pushes her straight down into the same dry well with the waiter. He tells her if he dies tomorrow, she can just starve to death down there. Amano sits huddled at the bottom next to the gagged, bleeding man. Across town, Yoshida is partying hard on a brightly lit dance floor. Tojo watches him from the crowd with burning hatred. Yoshida grabs a brunette and suggests they go to the restroom. The woman smiles and they walk off together. Yoshida tells his guards to wait in the hall. Tojo steps around the corner knowing this is his only chance. A suited guard blocks his path. Tojo plays it cool and says he just needs to take a leak. The guard sizes him up. He steps aside and tells him to make it quick. The bathroom corridor is empty, but loud noises are coming from the handicap stall. Tojo pulls his knife and gets low. He kicks the door inward with devastating force. The lock shatters. The woman screams and cowers on the tiles.
Who the hell are you? You got a death wish.
Tojo lunges forward. He slashes wildly, but Yoshida barely dodges. The blade grazes his neck. Tojo grabs him by the throat and raises the knife for the kill. Yoshida looks into his eyes and finally recognizes him. The guards burst through the door shouting, Tojo realizes he missed his window. He steps on the toilet tank. He vaults himself over the partition wall just as the guards lunge for him. He balances on the divider for a split second before hurling himself straight through the exterior glass window. Yoshida clutches his bleeding neck and screams out a 2 million yen bounty to whoever catches him. Tojo hits the alley at a full sprint with the guards hot on his heels. They check the intersections frantically but lose his trail. The moment they run past a pile of black trash bags, Tojo pushes his way out from underneath them. He grips his knife in total frustration. His cover is blown and he is out of time, but he refuses to give up. Back at a luxury hotel, Yoshida is getting his neck bandaged. He is absolutely furious and orders his men to catch Tojo at all costs. Out at the abandoned well, the waiter is dying of thirst. A heavy rope suddenly drops down from the opening. Tojo slides down into the pit carrying a plastic bag. Amano asks if he killed the target. He smirks and admits he screwed up. The injured waiter crawls forward begging for water. Tojo drops the bag on the dirt. The waiter immediately starts chugging a bottle. Then Amano's phone vibrates in Tojo's pocket. The caller ID says Yoshida. Tojo tells the hostages that if they make a single sound, they are dead. He answers the call. Yoshida is screaming for Amano. Tojo just breathes into the receiver. Yoshida instantly figures it out.
I can make you a free man, you know. Your buddy Suzuki is here too.
Tojo loses his mind. He screams at Yoshida to leave Yuji out of this. He offers to trade the 2 hostages for his friend. Yoshida just laughs. He says their lives do not mean a thing to him, so Tojo drops his trump card. Remember that autopsy report? A copy survived. He says he might not save Yuji, but he has enough evidence to send Yoshida to prison forever. Yoshida tries to brush it off as a bluff, but the vein throbbing on his forehead gives him away. He asks what Tojo wants. Our boy says he wants his name cleared because he is not ready to die yet. Yoshida takes the bait. He promises cash and a clean slate if Tojo brings the copy to his mansion tomorrow night for a face-to-face trade. Tojo agrees and hangs up. Amano screams that it is an obvious suicide trap. Tojo knows, but he has no choice. He tosses her phone onto the dirt floor. He climbs the rope back to the surface. This is his final shot. He spends the morning gearing up. He buys a sleek black jacket from a boutique. He steals a massive kitchen knife from a storefront display. He grabs 2 bottles of hard liquor. By dusk, he is sitting inside a ruined concrete building. He rests by a small campfire with his supplies laid out. He tightly wraps thick white bandages around his knuckles and wrists. He stands up in the firelight. He drops to his knees and presses his forehead against the dusty floor. He bows toward the glowing city skyline. He asks his dead parents to give him the strength to kill Yoshida. Once he avenges them, he promises to join them. Snow begins to fall over the city. Yoshida's private mansion is crawling with armed guards. They are shocked when Tojo actually walks up the snowy steps alone. Yoshida looks down from the second-floor balcony with a cruel smirk. He orders his men not to let him leave alive. Tojo stands calmly in the courtyard. The guards draw machetes and surround our boy. Tojo looks up and tells Yoshida to come down. Yoshida says it is too cold and invites him inside. Tojo stands his ground. He refuses to move an inch until Yuji is released. Yoshida raises a hand. The guards drag a heavily battered Yuji forward and shove him onto the snowy stone path. Tojo catches him. The head guard panics, saying they just gave up their leverage. But Yoshida laughs. Yuji has smashed limbs. He cannot run and Tojo cannot carry him while fighting. Yuji looks up with tears in his eyes, realizing his best friend is alive. He grabs Tojo's shirt and refuses to leave him. He begs Tojo not to walk into the trap.
That is enough. Get your ass in here already.
Tojo demands the guards let Yuji walk away first. They comply, dragging the struggling man toward the gates. Yuji, you have got family waiting. Live a good life. I am counting on you. He smiles warmly at his friend in the falling snow. Then he adjusts his collar. He turns his back on safety and walks alone into the grand foyer. Yoshida is walking down the staircase, flanked by his elite squad. Tojo stands tall between the drawn blades. His eyes glow with pure murderous intent. The final boss fight starts now. Our boy stands inside a grand mansion foyer. Armed bodyguards surround him completely. The corrupt politician's son Yoshida Koki walks down the staircase. He demands the autopsy report. Tojo refuses to hand it over. Koki grits his teeth and yells at him. He thinks Tojo is bluffing. The suited guards draw their weapons and close the circle. Tojo raises 2 heavy glass bottles of liquor. He flashes a confident smirk and suggests they just have a drink. Koki glares at the bottles with pure suspicion. Then polished dress shoes step into the room. A heavily built older man with slicked white hair enters. He has his own squad of guards. Koki looks over in total shock. His father Manjiro has arrived to clean up his mess. The new guards drag 2 bound figures into the room. They toss Yuji and Rei onto the marble floor. Tojo turns his head. His eyes go wide seeing his friends captured. Manjiro looks down at them with cold calculation. He orders his son to leave no trace and wipe out everyone involved. Koki is confused about killing Rei. The old man reveals a massive secret. Rei never swore loyalty to Koki. She is the one who leaked the autopsy report to Tojo's parents. Rei glares up past her gag. Her eyes are furious and unyielding. Tojo stares in stunned disbelief. He realizes she tried to help his family all along. Koki violently backhands her across the face. The strike sends her gag flying. He hits her again in a total fit of rage. Rei yells back from the floor.
I may sleep around, but my soul is not rotten.
She screams that she could not stand watching his parents suffer anymore. Koki kicks her violently. He promises to bury her right next to Tojo. Manjiro steps forward and towers over our boy. Tojo stares directly into the old man's eyes. His hatred is simmering. Manjiro smiles arrogantly behind his glasses. He demands to know where the report copy is hidden. Tojo smirks back with cold defiance and refuses to talk. The old man just chuckles. He gives a casual wave to his elite bodyguards. He boasts that his political power is untouchable. The guards step forward with drawn blades. They close in for the kill. Manjiro leans in with a sadistic smile. He has one cruel revelation left.
The ones who killed your parents are the men standing right here.
Tojo trembles. Thick veins bulge across his temple in volcanic rage. He unleashes a roar of pure apocalyptic fury. Winding his arm back, he hurls the glass liquor bottles straight at the guards. The heavy glass smashes against the marble floor. Thick liquid splashes everywhere across the entryway. One advancing bodyguard slips hard. He crashes onto his stomach and notices a sticky residue on his hands. It is cooking oil. Tojo darts forward with blinding speed. He slices a combat knife clean through the guard's neck. The Yoshida men look on in total alarm as their guards lose their footing. Tojo takes down another man. Blood sprays violently into the air. Koki panics and orders the whole swarm to attack at once. Our guy slips on a pair of dark sunglasses and drops into a low combat stance. He sweeps his leg low. The devastating kick takes out the lead attacker. He lands steadily in a crouch. His bloody blade is ready for the next strike. Koki grabs a bodyguard in sheer terror. He screams hysterically for them to kill this kid. Two guards charge simultaneously. Tojo smoothly slips between their swinging weapons. He flings a handful of white lime powder directly into their faces. Protected by his sunglasses, he grips his knife tight. His enemies are completely blinded. The guards stagger back. They clutch their burning eyes and groan in agony. Tojo dashes past them. He executes swift and lethal slashes across their bodies. He stands tall amid the fallen men. A glowing red eye glares from the shadows. A blinded guard desperately wipes burning powder from his eye. Tojo slashes his throat cleanly. Blood sprays across the smoke. He charges aggressively into the remaining men. Koki watches his private army fall one by one. His father grabs his shoulder. Manjiro tells him to fetch the alcohol. Lime does not wash out with water, but alcohol will clear it. Koki rushes toward the liquor cabinet. Rei grabs his legs with her bound arms. She trips him hard. She lies bleeding on the floor with quiet satisfaction. She did the only thing she could. The surviving guards grip their batons tightly. Koki finally splashes whiskey over the eyes of his men. The powder washes away. Manjiro analyzes the situation calmly. He warns them to watch out for the oil on the floor. A guard leaps off the grand staircase to ambush Tojo from behind. He lands squarely on his back. Tojo is pinned face down to the floor. Manjiro smiles and yells for them to strike. His trap has snapped shut. The others advance together. Yuji throws his injured body into the advancing men. He tackles one to disrupt their momentum. A thug raises his fist to strike the defenseless boy. Tojo appears instantly behind him. He drives the blade deep into the man's neck. Koki curses in pure frustration. Tojo blocks incoming strikes using heavy metal arm guards hidden under his jacket sleeves. He parries a heavy blow from a massive bald guard. Koki charges down the stairs toward Yuji. He vows to kill the friend first. Tojo turns sharply. He takes a glancing blow to his shoulder to defend his buddy. A devastating kick launches the attacker across the room. The survivors hesitate in genuine terror. The onslaught is relentless. Tojo pulls out a metal lighter. He flicks it open with a dark smirk and asks if anyone needs a light. The men freeze. They realize the floor is coated in highly flammable alcohol and oil. He drops the flame. The puddle ignites instantly. Multiple guards are swallowed by fire. Yuji braces himself. Koki stands over him with a weapon raised. Tojo intercepts with a lightning-fast kick. He smashes Koki right across the face. The rich kid crashes down. He clutches his broken jaw in disbelief. Tojo plants his heavy boot onto Koki's head. He crushes him against the marble. He raises his bloody knife for the execution. Manjiro screams at him to stop. The old man holds a sharp blade against Rei's throat. He threatens to kill her. Rei shakes her head. She silently pleads with Tojo to not back down. He keeps his boot pressed firmly on Koki's skull. He is completely unfazed by the threat. Koki weeps hysterically. He begs for his life and promises gold bars and endless cash. Manjiro lowers his knife slightly. He tries to negotiate a peaceful resolution. Tojo fixes him with an unwavering glare. "Do I look like I fear death?" Rei yells for him to ignore her. She wants the Yoshidas dead no matter the cost. Tojo stares down at the weeping son. He demands they bring out all the money. Koki scrambles up eagerly. He promises to fetch the gold bars right now. He hurries up the grand staircase. His real plan is to grab a hidden gun from the safe. Manjiro smiles smugly. He thinks he just successfully diffused a bloodbath. Tojo glances toward Rei. She gives him a subtle nod of total understanding. She drives a sharp backward elbow strike directly into the old man's ribs. Tojo hurls his combat knife across the room. The blade strikes Manjiro directly in the forehead. His glasses shatter instantly. Bro stands over the collapsing body. His dark silhouette is framed by spraying blood. The deputy police chief lies dead on the floor. Blood pools from the knife in his skull. Rei breathes heavily in wide-eyed shock. She looks up anxiously. She warns Tojo there are guns in the house. Upstairs, Koki cocks his handgun. He sneers with bloody vengeance. He rushes down the stairs carrying a duffel bag of cash. The gun is concealed behind it. He reaches the bottom step and freezes. Staring at his murdered father, he screams in a fit of manic rage. A voice calls out from behind a decorative room divider. Koki raises his weapon. He unloads multiple shots directly through the paper screen. The screen collapses. It reveals 2 dead guards and a smartphone playing a recorded voice on the floor. Koki realizes he was baited. He stares ahead in blind panic. Tojo steps from the side. He slashes his blade across the man's wrist, severing his gun hand entirely. Koki screams in blistering agony. Tojo lunges in for the kill. He slams Koki face first onto the marble with brutal force. Pinning him by the back of the head, Tojo ignores the traitor's desperate cries. He raises his bloody knife. He promised to wipe out the whole family, and he always finishes what he starts. He plunges the knife deep into Koki's neck. The execution is final. Yuji and Rei watch in stunned silence. The last Yoshida lies motionless in a massive pool of blood. Tojo drops his weapon. It clatters onto the stone. He looks upward with a hollow expression. Tears stream down his face. "Dad, Mom, I have finally avenged you." Rei helps Yuji to his feet. Tojo orders them to take the cash and run. He tells them he still has business to finish. Searching the private office upstairs, he finds stacks of cash inside the open wall safe. He notices a sealed white envelope resting right beside the money. Opening it, his eyes widen in pure shock at the contents. Outside in the falling snow, his friends wait at the bottom of the mansion steps. Tojo emerges through the double doors. He carries the heavy duffel bag and the mysterious envelope. He hands over 40 million in solid gold bars. He tells them to split it, lay low, and never contact anyone. Rei looks at him with immense guilt over her betrayal. Tojo forgives her instantly. He knows they threatened her life. Yuji realizes Tojo has no intention of fleeing with them. Tojo looks down with a shadowed gaze. He is completely done running. Yuji grabs his arm. He refuses to abandon him to prison or the death penalty. Tojo shows them the white envelope. He has a plan, but if it fails, he will not drag them down too. Rei realizes exactly what he intends to do. She looks horrified. He asks for just one night. He swears on his life he will make it back alive. Rei physically pulls a protesting Yuji away down the driveway. She yells at him to knock it off. They have to trust their friend. Tojo watches their silhouettes fade into the snowy night. Meanwhile, out in a quiet rural forest, Rei and Yuji take shelter underneath a stone bridge archway. Yuji demands to know what was in that envelope. Tending to his bandages, Rei explains it is proof of massive corruption among the city elites. Manjiro was the deputy police chief. Gathering dirt on powerful people was his specialty. That leverage is exactly why the big shots protected him and let him rule the city. Rei realizes the danger. If Tojo takes on those heavyweights alone, he is a dead man. Yuji tries to scramble to his feet to go back. Rei holds him down. She tells him to calm down. Tojo's insane plan might actually work. To those corrupt elites, Manjiro was a liability. They wanted him gone. Teaming up with them is the only way Tojo survives tonight. Inside a lavish residence, a black and white blackmail photo is reviewed. Tojo stands dressed in a sleek black suit. He slips the envelope into his jacket pocket. This dude carries a duffel bag up the stone steps of a traditional elite mansion. Our boy walks steadily up the steps. If he fails to secure an alliance tonight, the entire police force and the criminal underworld will hunt him down for the massacre. He approaches the illuminated main pavilion. Guards stand watch. 2 suited men block his path. Tojo demands to see Goda. A scarred guard scowls and tells him to come back tomorrow. Tojo glares back with unwavering intensity. It has to be right now. The guard cracks his knuckles. He asks if the kid wants to die. Tojo calmly unzips his heavy duffel bag. He turns it upside down. The severed head of Manjiro rolls out onto the ground. The guards stare in absolute horror. Tojo stares them down with cold composure. He tells them to let the boss know Manjiro is dead. The scarred guard stammers and sprints inside. 2 minutes later, Goda gives the approval to let him in. Guards escort Tojo through the traditional courtyard. A hand slides open an ornate wooden lattice door. Inside the luxurious room sits Goda. The bald, tattooed Yakuza boss rests at a tea table. A beautiful woman in a cheongsam dress attends him. Goda looks over his glasses. His discerning gaze locks onto Tojo. He notes that Manjiro borrowed his men to kill Tojo earlier today. He points out that showing up with the old man's head proves exactly who this kid is.
You killed my man, and you have the balls to ask for a favor?
The surrounding guards tense up. They are ready to strike. Tojo replies that if Goda actually cared about those men, he would be dead already. He asks the boss to hear him out. Goda leans back with an amused grin. He demands one good reason not to execute him. Tojo reaches into his jacket. He pulls out the thick white envelope. The serving woman takes it with a subtle, polite smile. Goda opens it up. He pulls out the compromising blackmail photographs of the city elites. He flashes a mocking smile. He asks if this is supposed to be a threat. Tojo clarifies it is a threat against the higher-ups. He has dirt on them far worse than these photos. He smiles with unflinching confidence. He has nothing left to lose tonight. His contingency plan is simple. If he is not back by midnight, the rest of the evidence goes straight to a mobile investigation unit. The clock on the wall ticks very close to the deadline. Goda pours his tea. His glasses reflect the light. He asks why he should care. Tojo explains the trap. The last place he visited after killing Manjiro was this exact estate. If the leak happens, the big shots will frame Goda as the mastermind. Goda smirks. He recognizes the cunning corner he has been backed into. This is not a plea for help. Tojo is threatening to drag the Yakuza empire down with him. Tojo offers an alliance. Help him, and Goda can use the dirt to make a fortune. Refuse, and they burn together. Goda bursts out laughing. He is thoroughly entertained by the sheer audacity of this brat. He extends a filled teacup. Tojo takes it and drinks it down in a single gulp. The alliance is sealed. Goda agrees to help. He is the only one in the city who can clean up a mess this huge anyway.
But there is a catch. Starting today, you belong to me.
Tojo agrees without hesitation. He pledges his life. Goda orders his lieutenant to handle the cleanup at the mansion. He also tells him to force the police off the case. The lieutenant bows respectfully. Goda grabs his walking stick. He tells his serving woman to show the boy a good time. He insists Tojo stays here tonight. Our boy feigns concern about his midnight curfew. Goda cuts him off with a smirk. The boss knows the truth. The kid was never going to leak the files. Tojo smiles broadly. He apologizes for getting seen right through. Later, inside a private guest room, the beautiful woman pulls down her dress strap. She looks back alluringly over her bare shoulder. Tojo stands politely by the bed. The woman, Munakata Ayame, waits in lingerie. He gently drapes his jacket over her bare shoulders and apologizes. He is just too tired today. He steps out and shuts the door behind him. Ayame glares at the closed door in pure intrigued surprise. Tojo soaks in a hot bathtub. He stares thoughtfully at the ceiling. Ayame enters Goda's private quarters to report her failure. The kid did not even glance at her. Goda puffs a cigar. He notes there are very few guys his age who can suppress their desires like that. Ayame asks for further instructions. Goda explains his strategy. The kid is incredibly useful but highly dangerous. They will close the distance little by little. Once they find a weakness, they can safely turn him into a loyal pawn. She bows her head in perfect obedience. Morning light filters into the guest room. Tojo sleeps quietly. His eyes snap open with sharp alertness. He sits up abruptly. Ayame leans in close against him with a morning greeting. Tojo politely prepares to take his leave. She points a remote at the television and stops him. She tells him to watch the morning news. The broadcast reports a fatal fire at the Yoshida villa. It claims only 3 people died, citing improper heating equipment. Tojo notes the fast cover-up, but he asks what happened to the bodies of the 8 guards he butchered. Ayame explains they were all fugitives. No one cares if they die, so the Yakuza simply buried them in secret. She steps close and rests a hand on his chest. she tells him not to worry anymore and invites him to enjoy himself. He firmly takes hold of her wrists. He halts her advance and asks her name. She smiles playfully and introduces herself as Munakata Ayame. He steps back. He declines her offer again, stating he has things to do. Putting on his jacket, he exits the room. She watches him depart. Meanwhile, under the stone bridge archway, Rei watches over Yuji. Tojo approaches in the distance. They spot him returning safely. Rei rushes forward. She throws her arms around him in a tight embrace. She cries out that she knew he would survive. Standing with his friends, this dude declares they will never be chased again. They are finally free. Rei breaks into heavy tears of relief against his chest. Yuji looks on. Joyful tears form in his own eyes. Later, at an old apartment building in the residential district, a dining table is filled with an array of incredible home-cooked dishes. Yuji marvels at the food. He had no idea the delinquent girl had this kind of talent. Rei stands proudly in the kitchen holding a spatula. Since running away at 15, she had to cook to survive. The three friends sit together enjoying their meal. Rei asks Tojo what his future plans are. She suggests they use the stolen money to start a small business. Tojo listens attentively. Yuji gets hyped at the idea of becoming a company president. Rei looks warmly at Tojo. She promises to support him whatever he chooses to do. Yuji hopes she will not go back to working at night. She shares her tragic past. Her brother has kidney disease, and after her parents died, night work was her only option. But thanks to Tojo, she can finally start over. They raise their glasses in high spirits for a fresh start. That night, Yuji sleeps soundly on the living room sofa. Tojo lies awake in bed. He stares up into the dark. He looks toward the door in surprise as a soft voice calls out. Rei stands in the doorway wearing an oversized white shirt. With a bashful smile, she asks if she can stay in his room for a while. This guy went to prison to protect his best friend and came out a stone-cold apex predator. Now he is building an empire. Tojo Manabu offers Rei the only bed in their tiny apartment. She touches his shoulder. She points out he is still heavily injured. She suggests they share it. Yuji snores on the couch in the next room. In the dark, Rei softly confesses that she has had her eye on Tojo since their student days. He lies awake. He listens to her breathe. The next morning, Tojo and Yuji walk down the street. They discuss their new living arrangement. Yuji is just happy they have enough stolen cash to survive as a trio for a while. That peace does not last. A blonde street thug with neck tattoos steps right into their path. Yuji panics and tries to pull our boy away. The thug mocks Yuji for walking again. Tojo asks if these are the guys who broke Yuji's arms and legs. The blonde thug gets in their faces. He reminds them of the rules. Their boss, Master Kuroki, banned them from this town. He arrogantly slaps Tojo on the cheek. Big mistake. Tojo shatters the guy's jaw with a single right hook. The thug crashes into the pavement, coughing up blood. Tojo unbuttons his shirt. The remaining thugs freeze. They see a torso completely covered in deep prison scars. The blonde guy screams from the floor for his men to attack. Two idiots rush Tojo at the exact same time, thinking numbers will save them. He dodges effortlessly, grabs the first guy, and slams him straight into the concrete. He slips under a wild punch and snaps the second guy's ribs with a brutal knee strike. The blonde thug watches in absolute horror. His backup was dismantled in 5 seconds. He tries to crawl away and begs for mercy. Tojo hoists him up by the throat against a stone pillar. He is about to end this man's life when Yuji grabs his arm. Yuji pleads with him to stop so they do not catch a murder charge. Tojo drops the bruised thug and promises to finish the job next time. The cowards run away shouting threats. They promise to bring their boss to crush Tojo tonight. Tojo invites them over. Yuji explains the local hierarchy. Master Kuroki runs all the arcades and internet cafes in the district. Tojo smiles like a shark. He decides they are going to crush Kuroki and take his entire territory. Yuji realizes his friend has become a monster. He points out they are completely outnumbered, but he knows 2 guys they can recruit. They head into an alley to find a burly youth with a bat and a lean kid in a backwards cap. Tojo is totally unimpressed. Yuji vouches for their loyalty anyway. The cap kid asks who the target is. Yuji smirks and drops Kuroki's name. He offers them a chance to back out since they will be fighting a massive swarm. The cap kid gets fired up. He has wanted to punch Kuroki for years. The big guy cracks his knuckles and grips his bat. Tojo likes the spirit, but he taps his temple. He explains they cannot win with numbers alone. Later that night, a white van rolls up to their apartment building. Kuroki steps out. He wears sunglasses in the dark. His blonde lackey confirms the targets are inside. The lackey warns Kuroki that these guys are seriously dangerous. Kuroki just laughs. He brags about his prison time and leads his goons up the stairs. Inside, Tojo watches them approach on the security camera. Yuji and Rei stand ready. Up on a tall bookshelf, the Cap Kid prepares an ambush. The front door gets kicked off its hinges. Kuroki and his armed gang flood the living room and surround our boy. Kuroki asks if he is the one who messed with his guys. Tojo casually says yes. The boss orders his men to attack. Two thugs charge forward with metal pipes. From the bookshelf, the Cap Kid dumps a massive bucket of white lime powder right on their heads. The powder blinds the entire front line. Kuroki coughs and yells for someone to drag the kid down. A thug reaches up. He catches a front kick directly to the face. Then the second trap triggers. A bucket dumps water over the blinded attackers. It reacts with the lime powder and chemically burns their skin. Kuroki screams about them fighting dirty. Bro ducks a bat, tackles a guy, and snaps his head back with a brutal palm strike. He steps through the dust and looms over the blonde thug. He reminds him of the eye for an eye rule. He sweeps the guy's legs and slams him hard into the floor. Suddenly, Kuroki's entire crew is knocked out. Kuroki calls Tojo a coward. Tojo tells him to bring it on. He rips off his shirt and challenges the remaining 3 men to come at him at once. Kuroki tells his guards to stand back. He accepts the duel. The boss tears his own shirt open to reveal heavy Yakuza tattoos. Kuroki throws a massive overhand right. It connects hard and drives Tojo straight to the ground. Before Tojo can recover, Kuroki jumps on his back and locks him in a tight rear naked choke. Kuroki tells the others not to interfere. Rei watches nervously. She knows Tojo has to win this alone to claim the territory. Kuroki grins and squeezes with everything he has. The choking pressure sends Tojo into a violent flashback. He remembers getting beaten and strangled by inmates back in prison. Kuroki tightens his grip and calls him a shrimp. This dude uses pure leg power to stand straight up while a grown man hangs off his neck. He drives backward and smashes Kuroki violently into the wall. The hold breaks. Kuroki rebounds instantly and throws a vicious right hook. The punch lands squarely on Tojo's face. He does not even flinch. He asks if that is all. Tojo drives a devastating headbutt straight into Kuroki's skull. Blood pours down the boss's face as he staggers back. Tojo grabs him by the back of the head. He pulls him down and delivers another brutal clash of bone. The surviving thugs watch in sheer terror as blood spatters the apartment walls. Kuroki is completely out cold. Tojo is literally holding him up by the throat. He drops the unconscious body heavily onto the floor. The recruits stare at him in awe. The blonde thug panics and screams for the remaining men to attack. The big kid steps forward with his bat and blocks their path. Rei shouts for everyone to stop. The fight is over. Tojo looks down at the motionless boss. He declares that they are even now, but he still owes Kuroki for breaking Yuji's legs. He raises his boot and stomps down with brutal force, snapping Kuroki's leg in half. The blonde thug yells hysterically. He claims he just called his cousin in the mobile investigation unit. Tojo just turns around and says he will wait right here. The Cap Kid panics. He begs them to run before the cops show up. Tojo casually puts his dress shirt back on. Yuji tells the recruit to calm down and trust his friend. Minutes later, a squad of armed riot police storms into the messy apartment. The blonde thug runs to his cousin, Officer Hidaka, and frames Tojo. Hodaka steps up and arrogantly sizes Tojo down. Tojo realizes this corrupt backing is why Kuroki was so cocky. Tojo asks if a beat cop really has that kind of pull. Hidaka rests his hand on his baton.
Interesting. No one has ever talked to me like that. Around here, I am the law.
The corrupt officer orders his men to cuff everyone. Tojo calmly pulls out his smartphone and asks to make one call. Hodaka laughs. He tells him to call whoever he wants because nobody in town can touch him. Tojo warns him that in 5 minutes he will be begging on his knees. The blonde thug brags that Hidaka is protected by Chief Tanaka, who answers to Boss Manjiro. Tojo smiles. They have no idea he already killed Manjiro. The screen displays an outgoing call to Munakata Ayame. The connection is made. Tojo gives a brief reply and hangs up. He lowers the phone, ready to see if his new Yakuza alliance is actually reliable. Meanwhile, Ayame knocks on the door of a private office. She walks in and informs Gata that Tojo is asking for help. Gata is annoyed. He tells her to turn the punk down. Ayame drapes herself over his shoulders. She whispers that cutting Tojo loose now might hurt their reputation for reliability. Gata rests his hand on her thigh.
Trust is a two-way street. I have no interest in grooming someone who will just stab me in the back later.
Ayame smiles playfully. She reminds him that no matter how much Tojo kicks and screams, he is still dancing in Gota's palm. Gata relents. He agrees to handle it, but expects Tojo to pay up later. Back at the apartment, Hidaka taunts Tojo about his 5-minute warning. Tojo stares him down. He wonders if Goda intends to leave him to rot. Hodaka gets tired of waiting and orders his squad to haul them all to the station. The big guy steps up and blocks the cops with his massive frame. The blonde thug gloats from the sidelines. Suddenly, Hodaka's phone rings loudly. He answers it and immediately starts sweating. It is Chief Tanaka screaming on the other end. Tanaka asks if he is currently trying to arrest Manabu Tojo. Hodaka stammers out a yes. Tojo grins. The trap just snapped shut. Hodaka bows to the phone and promises to release him at once. The blonde cousin asks why they are stopping. Hodaka turns with bulging veins and screams at him to shut up. He slaps his own cousin across the face as hard as he can. Hodaka instantly bows before Tojo, apologizing profusely for the misunderstanding. Tojo looks down with chilling authority. He tells the cop to get on his knees and apologize. Hodaka drops hard onto the tiles. He prostrates himself, clutching his shoulders and screaming for his life. He slaps his own cheeks in desperate repentance until Tojo tells him to take his trash and get lost. From the window, they watch the cops carry Kuroki and the thugs away. The Cap Kid is totally blown away by Tojo's connections. He slaps Tojo's shoulder and proudly declares him their new boss. Ri smiles proudly. Tojo tells them to drop the boss title. He promises that if they stick with him, he will make it worth their while. He rubs his chin and suggests they start a legitimate business. With Kuroki gone, his entire district is up for grabs. Tojo plans to take over all his shops and make a fortune. If he fails to secure this territory, his entire crew is going straight to prison or the morgue. The crew stares in shock at the scale of his ambition. Tojo says, if you are going to do something, go all the way. He turns to Rei and tells her to take their evidence straight to Goda. It is time to make a deal with the big shot who controls the whole city. Ayame slides open the wooden door to Goda's private office. Rei steps inside and hands a thick envelope directly to the Yakuza boss. Goda inspects the financial documents inside. They are detailed payoff records for Yoshimura, a major underworld power player. Ri politely asks for one more favor. She reveals their next target is Yoshimura himself. Goda leans back. Yoshimura is a black market dealer protected by the police. He questions why he should get involved. Goda listens as Rei explains he does not have to lift a finger. They just need him to sever Yoshimura's police connections.
If that is all, it is a simple task. But what do I get in return?
Ri bows deeply. She promises he will be properly compensated once the territory is theirs. 1 hour earlier, the crew is mapping out Yoshimura's network. He owns 10 places in the area and funnels huge money to Chief Tanaka. Tojo realizes that taking out Kuroki means absolutely nothing to Tanaka. To hit Yoshimura, they need to shut the police chief up first. That was why he sent Rei to Goda. In the present, Tojo and his crew walk right up to Yoshimura's massive mansion gates. The Cap Kid is nervous. The place is crawling with guards. Tojo tells him to relax. They are just here for negotiations. Our guy pushes the double metal gates wide open and marches inside. 2 massive guard dogs immediately charge them. Tojo steps forward, completely relaxed, and calls them little puppies. His killing intent manifests as a massive spectral white tiger roaring right behind him. The terrifying aura crushes the dogs instantly. They hit the grass and whimper. Yoshimura steps out onto his porch in sandals and a robe. He puffs a cigar and sneers. He cannot believe Tojo crippled his top earner and showed up like nothing happened. Tojo says that was personal. Today is business. Yoshimura tells him to get out. 2 bodyguards step off the porch. The big guy intercepts one in a crushing bear hug. The Cap Kid grabs the other by his tie. A chaotic brawl breaks out on the lawn. Tojo steps in with blinding speed and crushes a guard's face with a backhand strike. He drives the man's head straight down into a rising knee. The guard drops unconscious in a pool of blood. Yoshimura points a finger and threatens to call the cops. Tojo casually tells him to make the call. Yoshimura is shaken by his confidence, but dials Chief Tanaka anyway. He demands backup. Tanaka asks if the intruders are led by Manabu Tojo. Yoshimura confirms it. Chief Tanaka sighs.
Sorry, I cannot get involved. Orders from above.
Yoshimura screams into the receiver about all the bribe money he pays. The line goes completely dead. The underworld boss freezes in absolute shock. Goda really did pull the strings. Tojo smiles and politely asks for permission to come inside. Yoshimura relents. He opens his arms and invites the new apex predator into his home. Our boy sits inside a traditional tea room. He is here to claim his prize. Yoshimura stares at him across the low wooden table. The underworld boss demands to know why this kid crushed his subordinate. This dude smiles. He insists Kuroki got exactly what he deserved. Then he lays out a proposal. He wants to take over the arcades Kuroki used to manage. The wavy-haired bodyguard loses his mind. He draws a knife and screams about a death wish. Yoshimura raises a hand to hold his dog back. He leans forward and questions if this upstart actually has the skills for business. Tojo reminds him of a recent phone call. The police chief immediately rejected Yoshimura's request the moment a certain name was dropped. Sweat forms on the boss's face as he realizes someone powerful is backing this kid. Yoshimura grips the table in bitter frustration. He mutters that he would never tolerate this disrespect if Master Manjiro was still alive. Bro stares back with a cold gaze. He mentions that Manjiro set him up once, and now he is dead. Yoshimura widens his eyes in sheer horror. The story about the fire was a lie. He quickly agrees to hand over the arcades out of fear, but he demands a 70-30 profit split in his favor. Tojo smirks with cold defiance and reverses the offer. The bodyguard steps forward with his blade raised. He is absolutely furious at the disrespect. The big youth towers over the table to shut him up. Yoshimura yells at his man to stand down and accepts the terms. Actually, on second thought, let us make it 8 for me and 2 for you. The boss and his bodyguard stare in stunned disbelief. Yoshimura suppresses his rage and accepts the revised cut. Tojo stands up and extends his hand. They shake hands firmly across the table to seal the deal. Back at the apartment, the big youth brags about the encounter. He laughs about knocking out the henchman in one hit. Yuji and Rei celebrate the incoming steady income, but Tojo warns them not to let their guard down. He provoked Yoshimura on purpose. The boss folded way too easily. Back at the estate, the bodyguard argues for revenge. Yoshimura roars at him to stay in line. He warns that moving against this kid recklessly will get them erased. But then a malicious grin spreads across his face. He explains there are ways to erase someone without dirtying your own hands. Meanwhile, the crew rolls out a street map across their table. Tetsuya points to the location of their new arcades. They sit right in the middle of the busiest plaza in the city. Ri crosses her arms. She realizes this is a setup. That plaza is the original turf of a notorious drug dealer named Snake. He beat a man half to death over territory, and he just got out of prison this year. He is a total lunatic coming to take back his streets. Anyone who defies me, I will just crush them all. Yuji slams his hand on the map. He vows to back his friend no matter what. Tetsuya and the big youth are equally hyped for a fight. Only Rei looks apprehensive. Tojo rests a gentle hand on her shoulder and tells her not to worry. He announces a victory celebration for securing the locations. Later that night, they sit around a table at a cozy Chinese restaurant. Glasses clink in a joyful toast. Our guy excuses himself for a moment. When he returns, he drops a heavy black bag onto the corner of the table. He stands there holding out brand new smartphones. Tetsuya stares in utter disbelief. Tojo passes one to every single person at the table. The big youth instantly turns his sideways to test out a game. Rei clutches a pink phone against her chest. She realizes he went out of his way to pick a special color just for her. Yuji hesitates to accept something so expensive. Tojo reminds them what is at stake. They are a small crew surrounded by massive syndicates. If they fail to secure their own territory, the rival gangs will wipe them out. He needs them connected. He raises his glass and promises to take them all to the very top. The entire crew cheers and drinks to their shared future. Meanwhile, Tetsuya walks down the hallway from the restroom. A hooded man bumps hard against his shoulder in the narrow passage. Tetsuya turns and yells at the stranger to watch his step. Back in the private room, the new phones start buzzing. Rei answers her pink phone. The big youth sits right across from her and chuckles. He just wanted to test out his new toy. The whole table erupts into hearty laughter over the prank. Then Tetsuya checks his empty pockets in sudden panic. He realizes the guy in the hallway swiped his device. He dashes out of the room in a furious sprint. Tojo tells the others to stay behind and keep drinking while he handles it. Outside on the dim street, the hooded thief runs for his life. Tetsuya loses his footing. He skids hard across the asphalt. Tojo crouches to check on him, but Tetsuya yells at him to ignore the fall and catch the thief. Bro surges forward into the night with explosive speed. Back at the table, the pink phone vibrates again. Rei assumes it is another prank, but the big youth shakes his head. She looks suspiciously at the unknown number on the screen. The voice on the other end freezes her blood. A man orders her to meet him at the usual spot. He threatens her with severe consequences if she bails. She sits paralyzed with terror. Down a dark alley, the thief glances back in sheer panic. Tojo bears down on him fast. The hooded man hits a dead end enclosed by tall brick walls. He desperately jumps and hooks his leg over the top ledge. Tojo launches into the air. He grabs the thief tightly by the ankle. He rips him violently off the wall and slams him onto the concrete floor. Tojo pins him down. The guy cowers and stammers out a pathetic excuse about finding the phone on the ground.
Wait, Mr. Gaku?
Tojo looks down in surprise. He recognizes Oi from the same prison. Ui sits on the ground with tears of absolute relief streaming down his face. They sit together against the brick wall. Ui lights a cigarette and updates him on the prison fallout. After Tojo vanished, things got peaceful, though the other cell boss still holds a massive grudge. This dude smiles coldly in the shadows. He welcomes the challenge. He refuses to discuss how he survived the fire. Ui looks down in shame. He explains he was released a month ago but could not find a job with his criminal record. He was starving and desperate enough to steal. He covers his face and begs for mercy. Tojo grinds his cigarette out beneath his dress shoe. He stands up and offers his old cellmate a place in his crew. Ui looks up with fresh tears and swears he will do anything. Tojo tests his loyalty by asking if he would die for him. Ui stares back with earnest determination. He declares he would do it with a smile. Tojo pats his shoulder and tells him he is joking. They walk back to the restaurant together. The moment they enter the private room, Tetsuya jumps across the table. He tries to punch the thief in the face. Tojo catches him by the chest and forces him to stop. He introduces as an old friend. Ui bows deeply and hands the phone back with a sincere apology. Out of respect for their leader, Tetsuya lets it slide. He welcomes the guy to the crew with a grin. Tojo puts his arms around both men. He promises Oi will never go hungry again. Then he notices an empty seat. The big youth explains Ray rushed out looking pale after a phone call. Tojo dials her number. He listens to the unanswered ringing tone with a grim expression. He drops the phone and heads straight for the exit. His friends jump to their feet in anger and follow close behind. Meanwhile, in a quiet alleyway, Ray walks nervously toward a staircase. Several suited figures wait for her. Kagami descends the steps in a pink suit. He glares down furiously and slaps her hard across the face. He accuses her of trying to run from her debt. Ri holds her stinging cheek and calmly presents 2 wrapped stacks of cash. She tells him this ends all ties between them. Kagami snatches the money. He looks at the 2 million with greedy suspicion. Ri reminds him she only borrowed cash for her brother to have surgery.
If I had not lent you that money, your brother would be dead by now.
Kagami grabs her violently by the jacket collar. He threatens her with a cruel smirk. He demands 6 million total, claiming the extra is compensation for her cheating on him. Ray spits directly into his face. She screams that he was never her boyfriend. He was just one of her many paying customers. Kagami delivers a violent sidekick straight into her stomach. Ri collapses to the pavement in agony. He grabs her chin and forces her to look up. He cocks his fist back for another strike. A hand reaches from the shadows and clamps onto his wrist like iron. Kagami turns in furious shock. Tojo stands tall in the alley with a terrifying glare. He orders the scum to stop. Kagami clutches his arm and shouts at the stranger to back off. He claims whatever he does with his woman is his own business. Ri yells from the ground that this man means nothing to her. Kagami just sneers. He assumes Tojo is another customer and offers him a discount. Our guy steps in with lightning speed and caves the pimp's face in with a heavy punch. Kagami staggers backward with blood pouring from his nose. Tojo rubs his knuckles and promises to permanently shut that filthy mouth. The 2 suited bodyguards charge forward to protect their boss. Yuji and Tetsuya arrive right on time. They overpower the goons in an instant and slam them into the brick walls. Kagami wipes his bloody face and finally recognizes who he is dealing with. Tojo introduces himself formally. He asks Ray one last time to confirm they are not dating. She calls Kagami a scumbag who used her. Tojo cracks his knuckles. His expression hardens with murderous resolve. Kagami backs away in mounting panic. Tojo delivers a sweeping high kick straight into his head. One of the bodyguards tries to interfere, but Yuji drives a brutal punch into his jaw. He stands over the fallen thug and orders him to stay down. Kagami staggers back to his feet, panting heavily. He pulls a large kitchen knife from his jacket. He brandishes the blade with a crazed sneer and tells Tojo to prepare himself. Tojo pulls open his black shirt to reveal a deeply scarred and muscular chest. He advances with a dark, imposing aura. Kagami retreats in absolute terror, screaming that he will kill him. He lunges wildly forward with the knife gripped in both hands. Tojo watches the blade approach without a single blink. He intercepts the downward stab and grabs the wrist in mid-air. He twists the arm sharply until the knife drops to the pavement. A swift kick to the shin breaks the attacker's stance. Then Tojo drives a devastating punch directly into Kagami's face. The pimp hits the ground, groaning in agony. Tojo mounts him and raises a fist to keep beating him. Rei calls out frantically from behind, begging him not to dirty his hands for her sake. Kagami weeps and grovels beneath the grip. Tijo looks down with cold authority. He gives the scum 1 month to pay Rei 6 million in reparations. He yanks Kagami by his hair and reminds him what happens if he runs. Then he demands a public apology. Kagami hesitates in humiliation. Tojo feeds him another brutal punch. Kagami immediately raises his trembling hands in total surrender. The pimp and his bodyguards press their foreheads against the pavement. They beg for forgiveness in front of the entire crew. Rei clutches her chest and screams at them to get out of her sight forever. Tojo glares down and spits in disgust. The bruised goons support their limping boss as they flee down the street. Rei throws her arms around Tojo in a desperate embrace. She cries softly into his shoulder, overwhelmed with guilt. Tetsuya playfully asks for a hug too. Yuji ushers the boys away to give them space. She calls herself the lowest kind of woman. Tojo gently strokes her hair. He tells her they are friends, and her problems are his problems. He tells her to let go of her past because today she is starting fresh. He reminds her they have an arcade to take over tomorrow, and she needs to dress for the occasion. She looks up at the night sky with a radiant smile. The next morning, the crew gathers at the compound gate. Tojo stands dressed in a sharp black suit and tie while Rei adjusts his collar. She decides to stay behind and cook a nice dinner so she does not get in the way. Tojo agrees. If Snake decides to storm the shop, a fight could get messy. Rei blushes slightly as she admires how sharp they look. Tetsuya and Ui look down awkwardly at their own black suits. Tetsuya complains the fabric is too stiff to move in. Tojo wags a finger and reminds them this is strictly a scouting run. He orders them not to cause trouble. They arrive at the bustling commercial district. Across the street stands a massive, vibrant arcade with glowing neon signs. It belongs to Snake.
Dynasty Amusements.
Tetsuya realizes these guys are their direct competition. Yuji smirks and guarantees they can run a business better than them. 2 high school girls in sailor uniforms walk past the suited crew. They giggle and whisper about how cool Tojo looks. Yuji explains the modern industry to Tetsuya. Arcades are packed with dance games that attract girls, and wherever the girls go, the male customers follow. They walk down the block to their own property. Tojo stops dead in his tracks. Game Plaza Starlight sits dark and completely shuttered.
Game Plaza Starlight.
The crew stares at the desolate building in deep disappointment. Tojo realizes exactly why Yoshimura handed it over so easily. Yuji notes the arcade used to be lively before the rival shop opened. Tojo tears a faded warning flyer off the metal shutter. He assesses the situation. The location is good and a school is nearby. For it to go bust, someone must have been pulling strings behind the scenes. He grips the bottom handle and forcefully lifts the heavy metal gate. The dark, dusty interior is filled with rows of silent machines. Tojo immediately assigns maintenance duties to his men. He hands Ui a thick envelope of cash and tells him to handle the promotional flyers. He flips the main breaker and the arcade cabinets light up the room. Tetsuya happily tests the controls and gives a thumbs up. Tojo raises his hand and declares they open for business tomorrow. A pair of sneakers steps through the entrance. A blonde thug and a bald goon march inside. They aggressively demand to know who opened the shutter. Tojo turns around calmly. The intruders yell that Boss Snake placed a lockdown on this entire building. Anyone who interferes with his business gets killed. Yuji grabs the bald thug by the finger and crushes his wrist. The rest of the crew steps up with menacing glares. Tojo places a calming hand on Yuji's shoulder. He tells the goons to deliver a message to Snake. As long as he stays away, there will be no violence. But if he interferes, he will pay a heavy price. The blonde thug shouts back defiantly. Tojo drops his polite facade. His expression turns cold and lethal. He gives a subtle nod to his boys. Tetsuya and Kitamura swiftly walk past the intruders and pull down the heavy metal shutter. The thugs are trapped inside the dark arcade. The best place to discipline a dog is inside a cage. Outside the arcade, the 2 beaten thugs are violently thrown onto the pavement. They grovel on the ground, begging for forgiveness. Our boy and his crew stand in the entrance looking down at them. Tojo orders them thrown out. Kitamura hauls one away over his shoulder while Tojo steps back inside. He orders Tetsuya to hire contractors to fix the glass and replace the sign. Tetsuya salutes with a massive smile. He asks what the new name of the business will be. Tojo rubs his chin thoughtfully. He points a finger upward and declares they will be called Zenith Amusements. Tetsuya raises his hand and yells that he will get it sorted right away. Meanwhile, morning light filters into a quiet apartment living room. Tojo steps inside. Yuji looks around and wonders where Rei went. Tojo spots a handwritten letter resting on the dining table. Yuji reads over his shoulder and asks why she is leaving.
To Tojo. I rented a place of my own, so I will be living there starting today. Feel free to come visit anytime. Rei.
Yuji points out that living with 5 guys is rough for a girl. He claims he knows a woman's heart and says she is clearly pissed off. Tojo asks why she would be mad. Yuji asks what exactly they did after the rest of them left that day. Yuji pours whiskey into a glass on the table. Our guy stares into his drink. He gets lost in the memory of that night. In a flashback, Tojo and Rei walk together down a dark alleyway. Rei stops on the pavement. She clutches her chest with a tearful face. She rushes forward and throws her arms around him from behind. Burying her face into his back, she weeps in deep remorse. She tells him her biggest regret is not cherishing herself before they met. Tojo turns around and places a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He tells her to just start cherishing herself from now on. Tears stream down her cheeks as she recalls watching him back in their university days. She says he was pure and cute back then. Tojo looks away awkwardly. He insists the man he is now is the real him. She rests both hands on his chest. She asks why he would go this far for her when she already betrayed him once. He looks at her with total sincerity. He says she is his friend, and he would put his life on the line for a friend any day. Her heart sinks.
Just a friend?
He affirms that no matter what happens, she will always be his best friend. Rei smiles bittersweetly through her tears and says she understands. Back in the present, Tojo wonders if he said something wrong. Yuji leans across the table and asks if he is blind. He points out that Rei is completely in love with him. Tojo lowers his head into shadow. He says he already knows that, but they are barely scraping by and could drop dead in a ditch at any moment. He stares down into his drink. A guy like him cannot make a woman happy. Yuji grabs his wrist. He notes that Tojo does not hate her either. Tojo says he does not have the luxury to think about relationships right now. He sets his glass down with a heavy thud. He refuses to take responsibility for a normal life. Yuji explains that from her perspective, she must think she was rejected for not being good enough. Bro looks down with a pained expression. Night falls and Tetsuya sleeps soundly. Shin Ui and Kitamura are crashed out on the futon floor. The next morning, Tojo looks up in surprise as Shin shouts about the luxurious new gear. Shin and Tetsuya enter the room dressed in sharp matching suits. They present the promotional flyers for the grand opening.
Opening event special service.
Tojo holds his morning coffee. He tells them to hire 2 part-timers to distribute the flyers this afternoon. Shin smiles brightly and tells him to leave it to them. Kitamura reports the interior renovations are completely done. Tojo warns them to be extremely careful out in the district. Tetsuya grins and jokes that if they run into Snake and his crew, they will just bolt in a flash. Kitamura wants to crush them, but Tetsuya says they will wait until the boss has finished preparations. Tojo turns to Yuji. He instructs him to go check on Rei and get some change ready for the register. Yuji agrees. Tojo holds his glass and smiles with cold predatory anticipation. He announces he is going to meet this guy they call Snake. Yuji asks if he is planning to clash with the crew already. Tojo says thorough reconnaissance is essential for victory first. He stands up. He explains he is heading to Dynasty Amusements today to scout their movements. Yuji is deeply concerned. He points out those thugs already know his face, and walking into their turf is way too dangerous. Tojo points to his face with a confident smirk. In a place that chaotic, a small disguise is all he needs. Tetsuya eagerly steps up. He volunteers to infiltrate the enemy arcade himself. Tojo places a firm hand on his shoulder. He insists on taking the dangerous risks himself. Meanwhile, bright neon lights glow over Dynasty Amusements. Patrons play arcade games as Tojo walks through the entrance. He wears a black cap and a black face mask, blending perfectly into the crowd. The arcade floor is packed and noisy. Girls dance on rhythm machines while tokens drop into coin slots. Tojo sits at an arcade cabinet pretending to play while surveilling the room. The 2 bandaged thugs from yesterday walk right past his seat. They have no idea he is watching them closely. He lowers his mask slightly and observes them entering a private staff office. They shout urgently for Mr. Hyodo. Inside the private lounge, Hyodo sits in an armchair embracing a woman in lingerie. The blonde thug stammers that they got absolutely destroyed. Hyodo pulls away annoyed. He demands to know who the opponent was. The thug says there were about 4 of them. They just went inside an open shutter and got ambushed. He trembles in absolute terror as Hyodo looms over him. Hyodo violently strikes him across the face with a heavy backhand slap. The thug crashes to the floor, coughing in pain. Hyodo yells furiously, calling them useless trash for not even knowing the enemy. The bald thug desperately stammers out a rumor. He says the rival arcade is holding a grand reopening tomorrow. Hyodo shifts into an amused, predatory grin. He loves that someone has the nerve to look down on Snake. He delivers a devastating sidekick into a heavy punching bag. Standing over his cowering thugs, he declares they are going to crash the party right when it opens. The thugs bow respectfully. Hayoto orders the crew to roll out with weapons tomorrow morning. He laughs sadistically and bares his teeth with murderous excitement. Outside the office, the thugs walk past Tojo while venting their anger. They brag about how Hayoto will drop the punks in a second. Tojo pulls out his phone.
The gang is coming to raid us tomorrow morning. Get ready to intercept them.
Morning sunlight shines over Dynasty Amusements. Hayoto gathers his armed gang outside the entrance. Inside, the arcade patrons gossip about the upcoming confrontation. Tojo is still disguised. He casually asks a gamer about this Hayoto guy. The gamer is surprised he does not know. He explains that Snake runs the street from prison, but Hayoto is his lethal enforcer who executes every order. Our guy calculates his next move. If he wants to crush Snake, then Hayoto is the key. Down the aisle, Hayoto brandishes a wooden bat. He rallies fighters from the floor to go wild. Eager thugs pump their fists and shout to join the raid. Hayoto leads the growing mob outside. Tojo blends right into their ranks. The blonde thug spots Tojo walking near him. He points a finger directly at him. He squints suspiciously. Tojo glares back calmly from under his cap. The thug holds out a wooden bat. He complains about lending out weapons and tells him to go smash the place up properly. Tojo accepts the bat with a slight nod. Hayoto puffs on a cigarette as he leads his armed mob through the city streets. Meanwhile, outside the newly renovated Zenith Amusements, Yuji checks if everyone is ready. He and Tetsuya stand before a massive crowd of youths with megaphones. A hand holds up a thick stack of cash. Tetsuya nervously clutches the 10,000 yen bills. He asks if they are really going to throw it all away. Yuji raises his megaphone. He ignores the complaining and declares they opened this place to create a safe zone for their friends. They stand proudly before the cheering crowd. Tetsuya holds the stack of money high. He shouts that the owner is feeling generous and they are about to make it rain cash. The spectators cheer enthusiastically. A scarred thug in the crowd scowls in irritation. A pair of dress shoes steps forward. Hayoto and his armed gang march directly through the crowd. They form an intimidating semicircle around the entrance. The mob completely surrounds Yuji and Tetsuya. Hayoto glares coldly. He orders his men to drag out the boss so he can crush him. Tojo stands directly behind Hayoto, holding the borrowed bat. He glares with deadly intent as the mob roars. The spectators murmur in excitement as the tension spikes. Hayoto steps forward with his bat. His open suit reveals his tattooed chest. Tetsuya observes his battle-hardened face. He knows this guy is no amateur. Yuji and Tetsuya brace for the clash in their black suits. Hayoto aggressively pushes the gawkers back. Kitamura and Shin stand ready before the entrance with their own bats. Tetsuya smirks playfully. He flings the thick bundle of cash high into the air. Banknotes flutter down over the street and the crowd frantically scrambles to grab them. Hayoto shoves through the chaotic mess of people diving for the floor. The bald thug gets distracted and kneels down to scoop up bills. Hayoto strikes him across the face in a furious rage. He roars at his men to remember why they came. He raises his bat high and orders them to smash the shop to pieces. The armed mob charges forward swinging metal pipes. Tetsuya tells them to hold their horses because he brought a special toy. Kitamura steps up holding long strings of ignited red firecrackers. They detonate in a rapid series of loud explosions right in the faces of the charging thugs. Heavy smoke and bright sparks create massive confusion. Hayoto brandishes his bat through the smoke, cursing their cheap stunt. Tetsuya and the crew charge straight into the disoriented gang. Kitamura lifts an attacking gangster high onto his shoulders with raw strength. He hurls the man into another thug, knocking them both to the concrete. A fierce brawl rages outside the entrance. Tetsuya stands victorious over several downed enemies. He taunts them for being too weak. He delivers a crushing punch directly into a gangster's face. Suddenly, Hayoto looms up silently behind him like a shadowy demon. Tetsuya turns sharply. Hayoto moves with overwhelming speed and drives a brutal body blow into his ribs. He pins Tetsuya to the pavement by his throat with a merciless grip. Hayoto raises his bat high with both hands, preparing a fatal strike. Blood sprays violently across the concrete, but the blood is not Tetsuya's. Hayoto gasps in shock and turns around, clutching a fresh stab wound in his side. Tojo stands directly behind him holding a blood-stained combat knife. He pulls down his mask and introduces himself. Let me be clear. Anyone who bears their fangs at me ends up dead. He tosses his cap aside with deadly authority. Hayoto scoffs at the big talk. Tojo smirks darkly. He says it might be nice to get a taste of hell again. Police sirens wail loudly in the distance. The thugs panic as red emergency lights approach the scene. Hayoto clutches his bleeding side. He reluctantly issues a retreat order. His men support him as they begin to withdraw. He shouts final death threats over his shoulder, swearing no one will walk away alive next time. Tojo crouches beside the injured Tetsuya. He urgently orders them to get him to a hospital. Tetsuya smiles weakly despite his injuries and says his neck is just a little stiff. Kitamura and Shin carry him on their shoulders to seek medical care. Yuji walks beside Tojo. He worries what will happen if Hyodo actually dies from the stab wound. Tojo explains his tactical precision. He controlled the strike to avoid vitals. Yuji still fears the police scrutiny and a potential arrest. Tojo rests a reassuring hand on his shoulder. He smiles and promises the authorities cannot touch them anymore. Meanwhile, at the city hospital, Hyodo screams in pain. Medical staff stitch up his stab wound while he grimaces on the examination table. In a luxury office, a lit cigarette rests over an ashtray. Snake asks, "Who did this?" Hyodo grimaces from the floor and reports it was a guy named Gaku Tojo. Snake swivels around in his office chair wearing a flashy snakeskin suit. A live albino snake is draped across his shoulders. He smiles darkly at the name. A flashback takes us inside a prison cell. Snake sits on a bunk talking with Kai. He leans in close and offers to help Kai out once he is released tomorrow. Kai sits with a brooding scowl. He says there is a guy he needs tracked down. Snake asks for a name. Kai furiously shouts that Gaku Tojo framed him. He clenches his fist in pure vengeful rage. Snake pats his shoulder with a sinister smile. He promises to drag the target out and send him to hell. Back in the present hospital room, Snake stands over Hyodo as the staff finish treating him. He resolves to head out there and handle this personally. Meanwhile, a police cruiser arrives with sirens flashing outside Zenith Amusements. Kitamura reports the unprovoked rampage to the officers. He begs them to catch the guys who did it. He gestures passionately with a bandage on his cheek. Officer Hodaka approaches Tojo and Yuji with a clipboard. He asks who attacked them. Tojo names Hyodo and the Dynasty Amusements crew. He explains they are crushing all local business rivals. Hodaka acts completely outraged. The officer clutches his chest dramatically. He pledges to investigate thoroughly and make them pay. Yuji requests ongoing police protection against further revenge attacks. Hodaka thumps his chest proudly and gives his word to protect the shop. Tojo observes this enthusiastic promise with a sharp calculating gaze. Shin steps up and whispers that they found the guy Tojo asked for. Tojo quietly orders him to wait on standby at a nearby cafe. The real showdown starts now. Inside a quiet modern coffee shop, a silver-haired man is served a drink. Yuji sits across the table from him. The man looks out the window toward the street corner where Tojo stands. He confirms he will record everything. He adjusts his glasses and prepares his camera. Yuji warns him of the extreme danger of syndicate retaliation. The man pulls back his sleeve, revealing a massive surgical scar. He explains Snake's gang murdered his brother 8 years ago. Yuji listens solemnly as the man reveals they nearly chopped his arm off while he hunted for proof. He declares Snake is not his only target. The real enemy is the massive criminal syndicate lurking in the shadows covering up his crimes. Yuji asks if he is afraid of dying. The investigator shakes his head with unshakable resolve. He will stick to his convictions even if it kills him. He displays his official badge.
Work permit.
Tojo watches them through the cafe window from the outside street. A large group of men in dress shoes marches across the sidewalk. Snake leads his mob directly toward the front of the arcade. Shin nervously wonders if the cops will really protect them. Kitamura cracks his knuckles, furious and ready to avenge Tetsuya. Tojo strictly orders them not to lay a single finger on the mob. Kitamura argues in frustration against the passive order. Tojo gives a stern, unwavering command to just do exactly as he says. Snake's mob arrives and confronts the police officers stationed outside. Officer Hodaka immediately bows nervously. Snake grins with a terrifying scarred sneer. He states he is just here to settle a score and asks if there is a problem. He looks down at the cowering police officers. Hodaka instantly turns around and aggressively accuses Tojo of pulling a blade first. He bows politely to Snake, making a hasty excuse about urgent business back at the station. Shin yells in outrage at the sudden betrayal. Hodaka shouts back defensively, telling them to be grateful they are not being arrested. The police car speeds away, leaving Tojo completely alone with the mob. Snake sizes him up with an arrogant grin. Tojo stares back with cold, steady composure. Snake flicks open his lighter.
I made a promise to send you to hell, and I make it a policy to keep my word.
He stands tall as smoke drifts from his lips. Our boy smirks with dark, unflinching defiance. Is that right? Then bring it on. Snake gestures dismissively, ordering his mob to attack. Kitamura spreads his arms to protect the arcade, but Tojo orders him to stand down. He looks at Kitamura with a resolute expression, telling him to let them do whatever they want. The thugs violently smash the arcade machines with metal pipes while the crew watches helplessly. Glass screens shatter into pieces. Kitamura trembles with suppressed rage. Tojo steps forward. He asks if Snake is satisfied with just trashing the shop since he was the one who stabbed Hyodo. Snake cracks his knuckles and promises to make him pay that debt in full. He lunges forward and delivers a brutal punch straight into Tojo's face. A powerful kick launches our guy across the pavement. He lies on the ground coughing up blood. Kitamura rushes to intervene. Tojo screams at him to stop and let them do what they want. Kitamura freezes in utter disbelief. Snake raises his wooden bat high with both hands over the defenseless Tojo. Through the cafe window, Snake is seen relentlessly beating him into the concrete. Inside the cafe, Yuji slams his fist on the table in bitter frustration. A flashback reveals Tojo explaining the true nature of their opponent. Snake has someone higher up backing him. Yuji had questioned if they should just give up on the shop. Tojo outlined his plan. Taking down the big shot is impossible right now, so they have to make the big shot cut Snake loose instead. Back in the present, the silver-haired investigator uses a telephoto camera to capture every bloody swing. Snake's wooden bat clatters onto the pavement. He tosses it aside next to the motionless, blood-soaked Tojo. Kitamura and Shin drop to their knees in panic. Snake stands holding a lit cigarette. He delivers a cruel ultimatum to the crowd. Kitamura curses him, but Snake just laughs. He boasts that the cops and the prosecutors are all in his pocket, and no one would dare come after him. He spits down at the battered body. With a final shout, he gives the command for his gang to withdraw. Tojo lies in a pool of blood with a severely swollen face. As the mob marches away, Yuji asks the investigator if he got everything. The man checks the photographic evidence. He holds up his camera with a confident smile, guaranteeing Snake will finally get punished. Yuji nods with grim, determined focus. He runs frantically out of the cafe, screaming Tojo's name. Kitamura carries the unconscious boss on his back as they rush to the hospital. Meanwhile, daylight shines over the city hospital. Inside a room, a nurse scolds Tetsuya for sitting up in his neck brace. He grins and reassures her that he follows instructions perfectly. The moment the nurse closes the door, he tosses off his bed sheets. He swings his feet over the edge, determined to go help his crew. Suddenly, he stares at the doorway with wide, startled eyes. Kitamura and Yuji push a gurney into the room. Tojo lies unconscious, covered in heavy bandages. Tetsuya rushes to the gurney in total shock, asking what happened. Yuji delivers the diagnosis. It looks bad, but it is mostly bruises and scrapes. His life is not in danger. Tetsuya immediately realizes this was Snake's doing. He grits his teeth in pure rage and prepares to storm out for revenge. Kitamura grabs him by the back of his neck to restrain him. Yuji tells him to calm down because this is all part of the plan. He closes his eyes and explains the deliberate sacrifice. Tetsuya and Shin stare in stunned disbelief. Yuji says he took the beating on purpose just to crush Snake. Now they have to wait for the bullet he fired to hit its mark. Just then, Rei bursts through the doorway in distress. She rushes to the bed and leans over Tojo in tears. Yuji places a gentle hand on her shoulder to comfort her. She spins around and slaps him hard across the face. The entire crew looks on in utter shock at the sudden blow. Yuji holds his cheek as Rei confronts him.
What were you all doing? Why did you let this happen to Gaku?
Rei is in tears as she stares down the crew. She demands to know why they just stood there and let Gaku get beaten half to death right in front of them. Our boy just smiles from his hospital pillows. He tells her not to be ridiculous. Getting beaten to a pulp was simply a strategic move to crush Snake. Yuji reports that the arcade is completely trashed. They easily lost tens of millions in property damage. Tetsuya wonders if the head trauma made him crazy, but Yuji reveals the rest of the plan. They caught the entire brutal assault on camera. Within days, it will be all over national television. Gaku knows weaponizing public opinion is the only way to expose the tyrant. They will pressure his political backers to cut him loose. Then they launch the counterattack. Now they just wait for the fire to spread, and it spreads fast. News anchors are already blasting footage of a criminal syndicate brutalizing a rival business owner. The broadcast clearly shows police officers standing idly by while a civilian is tortured. The ward mayor watches from his high-rise office. He is absolutely furious. He dials the landline with a heavy scowl. Police Chief Tanaka picks up the phone. He is currently counting thick stacks of dirty cash. The mayor screams at him to fix this public relations nightmare. Tanaka laughs the whole thing off. He plans to hit the officers on the scene with fake disciplinary charges to calm the public. He even offers to stage a fake arrest for Snake. The mayor likes the sound of that, but he points out their biggest problem: the reporter who broke the story. They cannot let him live. Tanaka considers the assassination order as good as done. Meanwhile, an angry mob gathers outside Dynasty Amusements. Snake looks down at the protesting citizens. He correctly guesses this is all Tojo pulling the strings. Hayoto wants to go downstairs and crush some skulls. Snake calls him an idiot. Another camera recording would finish them for good. Hayoto grinds his teeth in pure rage. He swears to kill Tojo with his bare hands. Snake just smirks. He reminds his dog that they have powerful backers on their side. Right on cue, police cruisers arrive with sirens blaring. Kitamura and Yuji watch from the edge of the crowd. They wonder if the cops are actually here to do their jobs. The officers march upstairs, but they just respectfully ask Snake to take refuge at the station. It is completely staged for the mob downstairs. Snake agrees to share a cup of tea with the chief. He tells Hayoto to pack their most expensive gift. He strolls out of the building without handcuffs. Yuji grits his teeth. He sees right through the theatrical bullshit. Over at the police station, things are exactly as corrupt as you would expect. A wrapped parcel slides across the chief's desk. It is packed full of banded banknotes. Tanaka grins with a cigar in his mouth. He thumbs the cash and tells Snake he did not have to be so generous. Snake tells him to drop the act and name his price. Tanaka explains that the mayor will end both of them if this ruins his career. Snake waves a dismissive hand. He owes the mayor a favor but hates being threatened over such a trivial issue. Tanaka clarifies that they have already identified the reporter who leaked the story. They just need to silence the reckless fool permanently. He opens a dossier with Hayashi's face on it.
Name Hei Hayashi, gender male, year of birth 1986.
Snake flashes a homicidal grin. His pet snakes have been craving a taste of human flesh. Back at the hospital, the crew bursts into Tojo's room. They excitedly report that the cops hauled Snake away. Tetsuya thinks their main enemy is totally out of the picture. Tojo freezes in pure dread. He realizes Hayashi is in lethal danger. A white van pulls up outside an apartment complex in the dead of night. Kyoto steps out with an armed hit squad. The police chief fed them the exact address of the reporter. He leaves 2 men outside to cover the windows. Then he leads the rest of the goons straight up the stairwell. They bang loudly on the wooden door. Inside, the reporter sweats in utter terror. A heavy boot kicks the door completely off its hinges. Hayoto charges inside, but his eyes go wide in shock. The living room is packed with Tojo's crew. They are holding metal pipes and heavy bats. Kitamura welcomes them to the slaughter. Hayoto recovers his smug smile. He asks if this swarm of small fry actually thinks they can protect the target. Kitamura grips his bat with both hands. He remembers this is the guy who injured his friend. He orders the others to stay back. This kill belongs to him. Hayoto draws a machete and screams at his boys to swarm, but before the gangsters cross the room, 2 red plastic buckets are hoisted high. Tojo's crew flings the murky liquid straight into the faces of the charging thugs. Tetsuya yells to cut the lights. The room goes pitch black. Suddenly, the liquid splashed across the hit squad begins to glow a bright luminescent green. A heavy bat swings out of the darkness. It crushes the face of a glowing gangster. The rest of the hit squad panics. They are perfect neon targets in a lightless room. Tojo's men pick them apart with ease, but Hayoto managed to avoid the paint. He stands untouched in the shadows. Kitamura raises his bat to strike him from behind. Hayoto casually tilts his head. He catches the incoming swing with his bare forearm. Kitamura stares in shock. The guy can see perfectly in the dark. Hayoto delivers a brutal sidekick to the stomach. Kitamura goes flying across the floor. Hayoto mocks their childish tricks. Kitamura scrambles back up. He refuses to stay down. He charges forward with a massive haymaker. Hayoto effortlessly slips the punch. He counters with a vicious roundhouse straight to the jaw. Kitamura spits blood. Hayoto laughs. Brute strength is completely useless against a true powerhouse. The rest of the crew brawls with the glowing goons across the room. Hayoto stands over his beaten opponent. He asks if Kitamura is already out of tricks. Suddenly, a blinding flashlight beams directly into his adjusted eyes. Hayoto screams in agony. Kitamura steps into the light with his bat raised high. He brings it down right on top of his skull. Back at the hospital, Tojo promises Rei that his men will handle the hit squad. Rei is only worried about him. She begs him to stop fighting once this is over. Tojo promises to leave this life behind the second he takes Snake's territory. Rei is shocked. She asks if taking over the syndicate was his goal from the very start. Tojo tells her to forget about it. He thanks her for staying by his side and tells her to go home and rest. She walks toward the door with a gentle sadness. Tojo calls out and tells her to be careful on the way back. She blushes softly and agrees, but as she walks alone down the dark street, a luxury car pulls up alongside her. The driver calls her by name. Rei glares with a guarded suspicion. She demands to know what they want. A smirking thug named Choji steps out of the vehicle. He announces that Master Snake requested her presence. Back at the hospital, this dude is trying to get some sleep, shouting echoes from the hallway. A nurse screams that visiting hours are over. Tojo snaps upward. He pulls open the bedside drawer and grips the handle of a hidden kitchen knife. A massive bald enforcer kicks the door open. He asks if he has the right room for Tojo Manabu. Tojo is already on his feet. The giant swings a wooden bat straight down. Tojo leaps backward. He flings a cup of water into the big man's eyes. Without a second thought, Tojo pushes the large window wide open. He vaults out into the night air. The hitman rushes to the glass in disbelief. They are on the 4th floor. He looks down and sees his target land perfectly in the courtyard below. Tojo looks up and casually flips them the bird. The bald thug erupts in volcanic rage. He orders his men to chase that cocky bastard down. Tojo rips the bandages off his chest and sprints barefoot down the street. The armed gang is hot on his heels. He sprints right past a parked car. Inside, Ray slams her hands against the glass and screams his name. She reaches for the door handle to escape, but a scarred hand yanks her backward. Choji flashes a sinister grin and tells her the guy is as good as dead. Tojo ducks into a dark alleyway. The mob howls for his blood. He comes to a sudden stop in a secluded underground parking entrance. The thugs surround him. They brag that Snake ordered them to bring back his head. Tojo turns around holding his knife. He clarifies he was not running away. He just picked a spot where there would be absolutely no witnesses. A dark aura radiates from him. He tells them to bring it on. Meanwhile, the black sedan pulls into a separate underground facility. Choji escorts his captive right past a concrete pit swarming with live snakes. He reports to Snake that Tojo was unguarded and should be mincemeat by now. Ri glares with a defiant scowl. Snake turns around and tells her there is nothing to fear since her boyfriend is already dead. A subordinate hands over a clear plastic terrarium filled with white rats. Snake dumps the live rodents straight into the writhing pit. A massive serpent catches a rat midair and swallows it whole. Snake admits he is impressed by Tojo. He thought he was a greenhorn, but there is one thing he cannot wrap his head around. How could a fugitive guilty of murder and breaking out of prison brazenly fight him for turf as if nothing happened? Ri tells him she is going back to Gaku. Choji slaps her hard across the face. He screams that she will be snake food if she refuses to talk. Rei holds her stinging cheek and yells that Gaku would never lose to a bunch of cheap street punks. Choji raises his hand to strike again, but Snake orders him to stop. He stares down at his pets. He notes that the mice probably were not enough to fill their stomachs. Choji forcefully shoves Rei into a heavy iron cage. She grips the bars and screams as a massive padlock snaps shut. Mechanical chains hoist the entire cage directly over the venomous pit. Snake looks up with a sadistic grin. He plans to lower the cage inch by inch every single hour. Back across the city, storm clouds gather. Kitamura and Yuji march back to the hospital dragging a battered Hyodo by the collar. They walk into the room and freeze. The bed is completely empty. Yuji realizes it was a trap. Hyodo chuckles from the floor. He brags that their boss is already a pile of ground meat. Kitamura delivers a vicious punch straight to his face and tells him to shut his mouth. Tetsuya spots the open window. They realize he jumped and rush outside to track him down. They drag their hostage through the dark alleys screaming Tojo's name. They stop dead in their tracks. Bro is standing in a concrete driveway completely surrounded by unconscious bodies. He is shirtless, drenched in blood, and still gripping the kitchen knife. Tetsuya trembles at the absolute carnage. Tojo just wipes his face and calls it a scratch. Yuji confirms the reporter is safe at his place, but Tojo warns that the police are hunting him too. They have to move him. Hyodo laughs and says the reporter is destined to die no matter where they hide him. Tojo steps up and demands to know who is backing the syndicate. Hyodo spits in his face. Kitamura grabs his hair and drives a heavy punch into his ribs. The gangster screams at them to just kill him. Tojo places a hand on Kitamura's shoulder. They will take their time breaking him later. They drag their prisoner to a traditional safe house at dusk. They throw Hyodo into a back room. A heavy metal padlock secures the door. In the living room, Ui and the reporter reveal that the corrupt cops already raided their hiding spot. They barely escaped by hiding in a well. Tetsuya scowls. The police collusion goes deep. Hayashi lowers his head. He refuses to drag them down with him and prepares to turn himself in. Tojo places a reassuring hand on his shoulder. As long as he is breathing, nobody touches him. Ui breaks out a medical kit to patch up Tojo's reopened wounds. Yuji asks what their next move is. The enemy is not going to back down. Tojo decides the safest place is Goda's estate. He plans to have Rei escort him there, but his smartphone suddenly vibrates on the table. He picks it up. Snake's voice comes through the speaker. He grins and announces they have Rei. Tojo's eyes go wide with a deadly fury. He screams into the receiver, Snake promises he has not hurt her yet. But then a mechanical jerk drops the iron cage lower. Ray shrieks in terror. Live venomous snakes snap upward just inches below her feet.
In 1 hour, my prized snakes are going to show your woman a whole lot of affection.
Tojo threatens to drag them all to hell. He reminds Snake that they have Hayoto locked in the other room. Snake casually suggests a hostage trade. He tells him to come over for a nice long chat. Tojo accepts with a murderous glare. The crew is stunned. They cannot believe she got captured. Tojo tightens his bandages. It is a fight to the death now. Either they take out Snake or he takes them out. The boys raise their fists. They are ready to bleed for this. Ui offers to join the suicide mission, but Tojo hands him a slip of paper with an address. He orders Oi to take the reporter straight to Goda. Right now, the politician is the only man with enough power to protect him. He pats Oi on the shoulder. As long as Hayashi lives, they still have leverage. Ui nods and slips out the door. Yuji drags Hayoto up by his jacket. It is time to walk. Hayoto laughs and tells them they are just marching to their own funerals. Tojo slaps him hard and tells him to shut up and lead the way. The crew marches in broad daylight. Armed syndicate members stand guard outside Dynasty Amusements. They spot Tojo marching straight toward them with their bruised lieutenant in tow. A gangster steps up and demands they release him immediately. Tojo just glares through him and tells him to move. The thugs actually step back nervously. Hayoto orders his men to stand down and let them inside. Master Snake will handle this personally. They escort their hostage deep into the underground lair. A heavy iron security shutter slams down behind them. There is no escape route. Ray spots our guy from her suspended cage and begs for help. The 4 men stand before the crime boss. Tojo stares with absolute lethal focus. Snake sits cross-legged in his leather chair and welcomes the rats to his nest. Meanwhile, over at Gada's lavish estate, the sun is shining. Ui blushes intensely as a woman in a revealing cheongsam serves them tea. She tells them to make themselves at home and promises to pass their message to her boss. She walks back to the private quarters. Goda is busy inspecting a photograph of the reporter. He notes that Tojo delivered an incredibly useful piece on the board. The mayor's desperation to kill this man proves he is a goldmine for blackmail. His assistant warns him that Tojo is marching to a death match tonight. Goda orders her to send backup. He needs Tojo alive to keep doing his dirty work. He needs Snake alive too. Back in the underground lair, Tojo presses his knife to Hido's throat. He screams for Ray's release. Snake smirks from his throne. He asks why a rat thinks he is in a position to make demands. He snaps his fingers. The mechanical chain winds. The iron cage drops even lower. It hovers just inches above the snapping jaws. Ray cries softly through the bars. Tojo threatens to slit his hostage's throat right here. Choji steps up with a mocking grin. He looks down at his bruised comrade in pure disgust. Without a second of hesitation, he thrusts a blade straight through Hayoto's neck. The crew watches in stunned silence as the hostage bleeds out on the concrete.
You can repay the rest of your debt to Mr. Snake in the next life.
Choji grabs the corpse by the ankles and casually tosses it into the pit. Giant serpents immediately swarm the body. Tojo is disgusted. He asks if this is how they treat their own. Snake calls it survival of the fittest. You eat or get eaten. Then he offers a new deal. Hand over the reporter, and they can all walk away. Tojo refuses. The only outcome he accepts is Snake becoming snake food himself. He steps forward with his knife. Choji blocks his path and cracks his knuckles. Snake smiles and makes it a game. If they can beat his enforcer, he will let the girl go. Kitamura tries to take the fight, but Snake screams that he despises taking orders. Tojo waves his man back. He will handle this personally. Choji strips off his shirt. He slides a pair of heavy iron brass knuckles onto his fists. Tetsuya yells that weapons in a duel is completely unfair. Choji tells them they should be grateful they are not just getting slaughtered all at once. He launches himself forward with explosive speed. He throws a heavy hook. Tojo sways back to dodge, but the follow-up strike is incredibly fast. The iron grazes Tojo's cheek and draws blood. The boys try to rush in and help, but the armed guards draw blades and block their path. Snake points a warning finger. He tells them not to interrupt the show. Tojo glances back and barks at them to stay out of it. He turns his focus back to his opponent, but Choji closes the gap instantly and drives a devastating metal-clad punch straight into his chest. Tojo coughs up a huge spray of blood.
What makes you think a punk like you is worthy of challenging Mr. Snake?
Our boy just took a massive brass knuckle hit to the chest. He coughs up blood, but instead of falling, he declares he is going all out. He cracks his neck. The violent aura of a white tiger flares right behind him.
Are you saying you were not serious until now? Do not make me laugh.
Choji spreads his arms with a mocking laugh. He steps forward. The enforcer throws a heavy right hook with the jagged brass knuckles, but his eyes widen in pure shock as the punch meets total resistance. Tojo thrusts a bare fist straight into the metal weapon. Blood sprays violently from the impact. This dude slides backward across the pavement, keeping his footing perfectly. He winds up his bloody fist. His face is filled with unyielding fury. The two men trade a brutal barrage of rapid punches in the center of the room. Snake watches from his chair. He smiles with sadistic amusement at the show. They charge again. Their fists clash violently, sending blood spraying in all directions. Choji scoffs. He tells Tojo that punching solid metal barehanded is a great way to wreck his own arm. But then he stares at his own brass knuckles in pure disbelief. Sweat rolls down his face. He wonders if this kid even feels pain. Tojo beckons him forward with a bloody open hand. Bring it on. Choji clenches his fist. His pride is totally irritated by the arrogant challenge. Bro lunges forward with glowing eyes. His dark aura blazes around him. He smoothly ducks beneath a wild punch and strikes Choji clean across the face. The enforcer's face violently contorts as the blow lands with devastating force. Tojo squares up in a combat stance. He is nowhere near finished. They weave and trade another flurry of lightning-fast blows. Choji throws a massive punch, but Tojo effortlessly parries it aside with his forearm. He counters with a bone-jarring cross straight into the enemy cheek. Choji reels backward as blood spatters across the wall behind him. Tojo firmly grabs the man by the hair. He drives a devastating knee strike directly into the center of his chest. Choji stumbles backward. He coughs up blood while clutching his bruised ribs. Our guy rolls his neck with an icy glare, asking if that is all he has got. The enforcer wipes a heavy smear of blood from his mouth. He screams in absolute fury. He charges wildly forward with a raised fist, completely abandoning his guard. Tojo easily tilts his head to dodge the sloppy swing. He slips under the arm and drives a brutal elbow strike straight into his target. Choji staggers sideways. He is completely disoriented and covered in his own blood. Tojo winds up his fist. He lunges forward to deliver the final blow. He connects with a massive, skull-shattering straight punch. Choji is launched backward through the air. He crashes incredibly hard onto the pavement. Snake smiles darkly. He is thoroughly impressed by the sheer violence on display. The crew smiles proudly. They praise their leader for being totally god-tier. Choji lies face down in a pool of blood. He groans weakly. Tojo tells him to quit struggling. Our boy stands tall over his defeated opponent. He stares directly across the room at the crime boss. Choji is completely motionless. Tojo demands that Snake honors their agreement. Snake chuckles from his office chair. He claims that keeping your word is the most important rule in this world, so he agrees to let the woman go. He makes a subtle gesture to the suited guard holding the pulley rope. Ri clutches the iron bars of the suspended cage. She screams in sudden panic. The guard completely lets go of the support line. The heavy iron cage plummets straight down into the pit with a violent echoing crash. Tetsuya struggles against the guards restraining him. He screams that he will kill the boss. Down in the darkness, giant snakes instantly coil around the bars. Ray screams in absolute terror.
I said I would let her go, but I never promised how I would release her, did I?
The boss smiles with a twisted sneer. Tojo glares with lethal intent. He swears the man will pay a steep price for this. Then he does not even hesitate for a second. He leaps directly into the pit. The crew cries out in alarm as their leader dives into the writhing mass of serpents. He lands right at the bottom among hundreds of hissing snakes. The massive venomous reptiles open their jaws. He grabs a large one right behind its head with his bare hands. He hurls the beast across the pit to clear a path. Grabbing the heavy iron cage door, he rips it clean off its hinges with sheer physical force. He scoops Ray into his arms and tells her to hold on tight, but multiple serpents lunge aggressively from the shadows. Several snakes sink their venomous fangs deep into his legs. Another massive snake strikes him directly in the shoulder and neck while he shields her. Ray clutches his chest in tears. She desperately apologizes for dragging him into this. His vision instantly blurs white. The potent venom spreads rapidly through his bloodstream. Pushing through the agony, he carries her up to the ledge and safely places her onto the solid floor. Then his strength completely fails. He collapses onto his stomach. Snake looks down from across the room. Nobody has ever crawled out of that snake pit alive. Ri shields the paralyzed Tojo. She begs the boss for help, offering to do anything. Snake walks forward. He says Tojo is too rare of a talent to let die here. He holds up a small glass vial of antivenom with a smug grin.
Swear loyalty to me, and I will save your life with this anti-venom.
Ri reaches out desperately to snatch the vial. Snake effortlessly sidesteps her grasp. He brutally shoves her to the ground next to the dying man. Then he steps his heavy boot down onto the back of her head, pinning her to the concrete. He looms over them both, demanding an answer. Tojo grits his teeth in agonizing rage from the floor. Keep dreaming. Snake turns with a cold scowl. He orders his men to throw them all back in. Suddenly, an iron security shutter rolls up from the outside. Armed men in dark suits step into the facility. The bodyguards turn in alarm, aiming their submachine guns at the intruders. Goda's Chief Lieutenant Muto steps through the entrance holding a firearm. He tells the crime boss that Goda and the ward mayor have reached an agreement. They are calling a truce. Muto aims his handgun directly at Snake. He warns him that if Tojo dies today, his body will be riddled with bullets. Snake scowls. He had no idea Tojo actually had a heavy hitter like Goda backing him up. Muto keeps his gun trained on his head, demanding a simple yes or no. A rogue gangster charges toward Muto from behind with a knife raised. Without even turning around, Muto fires his gun. He shoots the charging gangster dead on the spot. The surrounding bodyguards tense up in absolute shock at the lethal marksmanship. Standing over the dead body, Snake forces a compliant smile. He agrees to follow their wishes. But inside, he clenches his fists in bitter rage. He refuses to spend his life bowing under someone else's boot. He hands the glass vial over to Suzuki. Muto orders the crew to hurry up and get their boss to the hospital. Suzuki and Kitamura hoist the unconscious man onto their shoulders. They carry him out of the facility immediately. Suzuki glares back with simmering vengeance. One day, he will make Snake pay for this. Meanwhile, inside a warehouse, the reporter Hayashi hangs bound by his wrists from a ceiling rope. The corrupt ward mayor speaks with Goda, thanking him for catching this nuisance. They discuss moving forward with the Old Town Plaza redevelopment project. The mayor looks sideways with a greedy smirk. He hints that winning the bid is not exactly easy. Goda glares with cold menace. He reminds the politician that he has plenty of disposable muscle to fix problems. The mayor immediately backpedals. He nervously laughs, claiming he just wanted a slightly larger cut of the profits. The old man chuckles and rests a hand on his shoulder, perfectly in control of the game. At the hospital, the illuminated operating room door stays shut for hours. Rei sits in the waiting area, weeping into her hands. She blames herself for everything. Tetsuya sits beside her, trying his best to offer comfort. Suzuki slams his fist against the wall in bitter frustration at his own uselessness. Finally, the doctor steps out of the operating room. He confirms Tojo is totally out of danger, though the venom will take time to flush out. The crew erupts in immense relief and joy. Our boy lies resting in a hospital bed with an IV drip connected to his arm. Ri sits beside him, clutching his blanket in tears of absolute gratitude. Muto clears his throat as he steps into the doorway. He approaches the bedside, relieved to see the kid is still breathing. Tojo respectfully asks him to pass on his gratitude to Goda. Muto delivers the strict new operational terms: absolute ceasefire. From today on, Tojo and Snake cannot interfere with each other. A fight to the death is no longer an option. Tojo realizes Goda must have struck a backroom deal with the big shot funding Snake, but he refuses to yield. He tells Muto he has no intention of losing to Snake in the arcade business. Muto smiles approvingly. He waves his hand and departs. Tetsuya asks if this means they can reopen the shop once Tojo is back on his feet. Bro sits up in bed with firm determination. They are not waiting. They reopen tomorrow. Kitamura pumps his fist enthusiastically. Ri leans in close. She softly announces that she is moving back in with the guys. Tetsuya turns in pure shock and excitement. He claps his hands gleefully, thrilled to have her cooking every day. She wants to help run the arcade and look after Tojo permanently. Tojo looks at her with quiet concern. Staying with them means she might end up in danger again. But Rei leans over the bed, declaring her lifelong commitment. He has saved her life too many times to count. She promises to stick by his side forever. The boys immediately start teasing the pair with broad smiles. Ri blushes deeply. Suzuki interrupts to ask about their business strategy. Beating Snake with their current tiny setup is going to be incredibly tough. If they do not figure out a way to make cash fast, the whole arcade will go bankrupt. Toji ponders the situation. He looks over at Kitamura. He remembers the heavy hitter is famously good at video games. Kitamura proudly thumps his chest. He boasts that he has never lost a single match in the fighting game King of Street Battle. Tetsuya confirms it. The guy used to win so much that he constantly started real fights at the arcade. This dude outlines a brilliant promotional event. They will print flyers offering a 100,000 yen cash prize to anyone who can beat their resident genius player. Kitamura points at himself in absolute panic. He waves his hands defensively, terrified of bankrupting them on opening day. Tetsuya nudges him, teasing his sudden lack of confidence. But Kitamura is sweating. If a bunch of hardcore pros show up, they are completely ruined. Tojo explains his psychological marketing strategy with a knowing smile. Kitamura does not need to win every match. In fact, he actually wants him to throw a few games on purpose. The crew looks confused. Tojo lays out the logic. Customers will not pay to challenge an opponent they know they have zero chance of beating, but if they see him lose, they will think they have a chance. Do that, and the players will flock in constantly. Suzuki catches on instantly. It turns into a massive, self-sustaining event. Tojo locks in his confident gaze. Exactly. The crew cheers enthusiastically. They have a real plan now. The boys step out. Rei blushes shyly, holding a towel beside the bed. She offers to wipe him down. She leans in close. Suddenly, Shin bursts frantically through the door, screaming in absolute panic. Hayashi is in critical danger. If they do not act now, the reporter is going to die. Shin stands in the doorway looking incredibly awkward as Rei sits on the bed. Tojo sits up with a shocked, urgent expression. He demands to know what happened. He grits his teeth in frustration. He thought sending Hayashi to Goda would keep him sheltered, but now he realizes Goda is actually using him as leverage. Our guy swings his legs over the side of the bed and pulls on his shirt. Rei asks what he is doing. His wounds have not even healed yet. He looks down with dark, focused determination. He is going to save his friend. Rei grabs his arm from behind, pleading frantically. If he goes now, he will completely burn his bridge with Goda. She looks into his eyes with deep worry. She begs him to reconsider. Is it really worth betting his own life to save a pawn? Tojo looks down at her with firm conviction. It is not about worth. Hayashi is a comrade who helped them out. That reason alone is more than enough. Rei stares at him with wide, resolute eyes. She agrees to go with him. They arrive at Goda's lavish traditional compound. Goda's assistant Ayame opens the door to the private room. She announces that Tojo and his group have been waiting. Goda scowls behind his glasses. He mocks the kid for finally remembering this old man. He steps into the spacious lounge. Tojo stands up, dressed sharply in a vest and tie. He bows his head in deep respect. Then he drops to his knees, prostrating himself completely. He sincerely apologizes for not coming sooner to express his gratitude. Goda looks down over his glasses. He asks if Tojo remembers why he saved him. The kid answers perfectly. He promised to serve as Goda's loyal subordinate. Goda gives a skeptical smile. He asks what he actually gains from constantly cleaning up his messes. Tojo holds up a silver metal briefcase. It contains 20 million yen, their entire earnings so far. Goda leans on his walking stick. He looks completely unimpressed by the small amount of cash. But Tojo opens the briefcase. Alongside the money is all the blackmail evidence they recovered from the corrupt officials. He offers it as a massive token of gratitude. Goda smiles with amused curiosity. The boy came to negotiate by betting his entire fortune. He asks what he wants. Tojo glares with intense determination. He wants Hayashi back. Goda explains the harsh business reality. He is holding the reporter until the mayor fulfills his promise. Hayashi holds too many fatal weaknesses over the city officials. Returning him now would just get him killed anyway. Tojo refuses to yield. He cannot just stand by and watch his savior die. Goda turns away in disgust. He calls him an idiot for letting sentiment cloud his judgment. That one reporter's life buys them a truce with Snake and increases mutual profits. It is the perfect deal. Tojo rises firmly to his feet. He will respond to any other request, but he absolutely will protect Hayashi. The old man's face turns furious. He barks that if Tojo is going to be soft, he will never look after him again. He turns his back and orders Muto to throw him out. Muto places a firm hand on the kid's shoulder, violently escorting him away. Tojo resists the grip. He shouts out one last proposal. He claims there is a way to save Hayashi's life while keeping the relationship with the mayor perfectly intact. Goda pauses and glances back over his shoulder. Tojo glares coldly. He states that if Goda rejects it, he will take the man back by force. Muto instantly draws his handgun and aims it directly at the side of Tojo's head. He warns him not to get cocky with the man who saved his life. Bro glares sideways with a gun pressed against his temple. He refuses to back down. He will protect his comrade even at the cost of his own life. Muto puts his finger on the trigger. He asks if he should just execute him right here. Tojo stares him down without flinching. He yells at him to shoot. Shin sweats in absolute terror in the background. Suddenly, Ayame steps between them. She gently places her hand on Muto's arm to lower the weapon. Carrying the briefcase of money, she softly asks her master to at least listen to the boy's idea. Goda raises his hand with a subtle, calculating glance. Muto slowly lowers his weapon. Goda sits back down. He finds this insane bravery incredibly amusing, but he warns the kid that aiming for the top means throwing away all sentiment. Tojo stands tall. He has no interest in climbing to the top. He just wants to live a life he is not ashamed of. Goda grins with cunning amusement. He agrees to hear the plan. Ayame smiles warmly and places a hand on Rei. She offers to take her out of the room to fix her ruined makeup. They walk side by side down a dimly lit hallway. Ray asks if the politician will actually accept the deal. Ayami just gestures toward an open door. Inside the private dressing room, multiple revealing lace outfits hang displayed on a rack. A collection of heavy leather collars and restraints sits laid out across the bed. Ray looks around the room with shocked, uneasy dread. Ayame leans in close behind her. She whispers that Hayashi's survival depends entirely on her hard work tonight. Ri stares wide-eyed at the assistant. She notices a terrible wound on her shoulder. Ayame turns her back. Her skin is completely covered in heavy whip scars. She explains that Goda is old, and over the years he developed some very specific, brutal hobbies. She tells Ray she can go home right now if she is not serious about saving Tojo. But Ray just glares forward with resolute, unflinching eyes. She tells the woman she is fully prepared. Back in the lounge, Tojo finishes explaining his crazy strategy. He guarantees nobody loses anything. Muto laughs and slaps him on the back. The sheer audacity of the idea is amazing. Goda lights a cigarette. He decides to play along and put on a little act, but he puffs smoke with a stern warning. If Tojo fails, both he and Hayashi are completely dead. Tojo bows slightly. He accepts full responsibility. Outside the entrance, they run into Ayame. She teases them for leaving so soon. Tojo smiles awkwardly and says goodbye. He has no idea what Ray is actually doing inside. His phone buzzes with a text from her telling him to take care. Deep inside the compound, Ray looks down at her screen, crying tears of quiet emotion. The next day outside Zenith Amusements, long strings of red firecrackers ignite with loud pops. Suzuki calls out through the massive crowd. He announces the King of Street Battle tournament. Customers shout excitedly. Entry is totally free, and beating the genius player wins cash on the spot. Suzuki frantically hands out registration clipboards as the mob pushes forward. Inside, Kitamura looks over his shoulder in surprise. Tojo is already out of the hospital, dressed sharply in his pink shirt and tie. Our boy gestures to the packed lobby. The turnout is absolutely massive. Kitamura sweats nervously at the machine. He begs them not to blame him if the shop goes under. Tojo tells him to relax. Win or lose, they still profit. If he loses, customers think they have a chance. If he wins, the arcade builds a reputation for having strong players. But Kitamura points out they barely have any money left to pay the prize pool. Tojo just smirks with total confidence. He has it all figured out. The tournament begins. Spectators cheer wildly as Kitamura mashes the joystick against a challenger. Tetsuya shouts excitedly from the sidelines. Tojo sits in an armchair nearby, watching the matches unfold with a satisfied smirk. Suddenly, a challenger jumps up with clenched fists. He actually beat the genius player. Suzuki steps up and happily hands an envelope of prize money to the ecstatic winner. The winner raises the stack of cash into the air. Seeing a real payout makes the crowd go absolutely feral. By 11 at night, the event finally wraps up. Suzuki claps his hands together and tells the crowd to come back tomorrow for another chance. Customers chat excitedly, refusing to leave. Half of them swear they are going to stay and practice all night. Tetsuya is completely swamped behind the coin exchange counter. Finally, Ray walks through the front entrance. Tojo smiles and welcomes her back. She approaches with a completely exhausted expression. Stepping behind the register, she offers to take over so the crew can rest. Kitamura slumps over the arcade controls. He groans that he did his absolute best. Suzuki holds the ledger clipboard. The sales were fantastic, bringing in 160,000 yen. But since they paid out over 800,000 in prize money, they are basically bankrupt. If they do not find cash soon, the entire business will completely fold. He asks what the hell they are supposed to do now. Our boy just smiles with a predatory smirk. He reminds them there is still exactly one guy who has not repaid his debt. The arcade is quiet for once. Kitamura is out cold against a cabinet. Tetsuya is snoring on the sofa. Tojo and Suzuki decide to let them sleep. They will handle the debt collection themselves. Meanwhile, Kagami is living it up in a VIP lounge. He is drinking and surrounded by women. A panicked thug bursts through the door. Kagami is furious at the interruption. The thug stammers that Tojo has arrived. Kagami freezes. He knows exactly why Tojo is here. He asks how many men Tojo brought. Just 2. Kagami scoffs. He tells his guys not to freak out. The door flies open so hard it knocks the subordinate back. Our boy Tojo steps into the room. His glare is ice cold. Kagami instantly switches to a subservient bow. He offers them seats. Tojo ignores the offer. He demands the money. Kagami forces a smile and promises he has it right here. He pulls out a remarkably thin envelope and hands it over. Tojo fans the bills. Barely 1 million. Kagami pleads poverty. He claims the shop barely makes anything after wages. Tojo gives him a deadly stare. If he lets this slide, the remaining 5 million debt is completely wiped out. Kagami laughs nervously and admits that was the plan. Tojo grabs a beer bottle and smashes it squarely over his head. A bodyguard pulls a knife and charges. Suzuki intercepts him instantly. He presses a sharp blade to the bodyguard's neck. Kagami clutches his bleeding face. He screams that Tojo should not get cocky. Tojo calmly sits down on the sofa. Kagami pulls out his phone. He brags about his new backup. One call and his new big brother will crush them. Tojo is completely unfazed. He demands the 6 million in full regardless. Kagami dials frantically. He begs a man named Baba for help right away. Baba puts him on speaker. He promises to gather the guys and head over immediately. Kagami lowers the phone with a malicious grin. This dude Tojo just lights a cigarette. Interesting that there is someone reckless enough to back you up. Let us see their face. Outside, a luxury car screeches to a halt. Baba leads his armed thugs down the hallway with a hatchet. Kagami points a machete into the room with a relieved grin. He tells Baba that Tojo is the target. Tojo looks up from his drink. He recognizes the gangster. Baba freezes in utter dread. Kagami looks confused. Tojo leans back. He asks if this is the big brother Kagami was talking about. Baba grits his teeth. His boss explicitly told him not to touch Tojo. Tojo stands up. He dares Baba to try something and face the consequences. His aura is absolutely chilling. Baba breaks into a cold sweat. He immediately turns around. He tells his men they are leaving. Kagami reaches out desperately as his backup walks away. Tojo picks up another beer bottle. He offers to deduct 200 yen per hit until the remaining 5 million is paid. Kagami drops to his knees in terror. He promises to get the money right now. Back at the office, Suzuki counts out the thick stacks of cash. It is exactly 6 million. Kagami bows submissively. Tojo warns him never to pull a stunt like that again. Suzuki notes that the internet cafe is highly profitable. Kagami admits they cannot keep it going much longer. Tojo asks if the payment bankrupted them. Kagami reveals the truth. The entire district is scheduled for demolition soon. Tojo pauses. He processes this massive piece of information. A sharp and calculating smile spreads across his face. Walking through the corridor, Suzuki connects the dots. Yoshimura handed over the arcades easily because he knew the demolition was coming. If they do not take over before then, all their efforts go up in smoke. Suzuki worries they have no time left. Tojo disagrees. This timeline works out perfectly for them to surpass Snake. The next day, Zenith Amusement drops a flyer.
Ultimate Champion Tournament. Grand Prize 1 million. Zenith Amusement.
Across town, Snake reads the flyer with a dark scowl. His subordinate is furious. Zenith just stole a huge chunk of their customer base. Snake crumples the paper in rage. The subordinate wants to send guys over to trash the place. Snake shuts that down immediately. If they strike first, they lose the trust of the higher-ups. The truce must be maintained. The subordinate suggests hosting their own competing tournament. Snake calculates the cost. Outdoing Tojo would cost them at least 1 million per event. Snake dismisses the idea entirely. He believes Tojo is operating at a massive loss and will collapse soon. The subordinate argues that winning back customers is worth it. Snake asks what kind of people get lured in by fighting game tournaments. The answer is broke losers with no money. Snake grins, his gold tooth gleaming.
Exactly. I could not care less about the pocket change those people spend.
He leans back. His real money comes from the high rollers at the slot machines. The subordinate nods in understanding. They will just let Tojo have the poor gamers. But walking down the hallway, the subordinate mutters that Snake does not get it. This is going to become a serious problem. Over at Zenith, the place is packed. Kitamura is crushing the arcade tournament while the crowd cheers. Suzuki reviews player records and calls up the next challenger. Behind the counter, Tojo asks Rei how sales have been. Rei looks worried. Traffic is up, but after tournament expenses, they are heavily in the red. Bro smirks calmly. He plans to keep the strategy going. Rei reminds him they already handed all their reserve money over to Oda. Tojo simply empties a heavy black duffel bag onto the counter. Thick stacks of cash spill everywhere. Rei stares in absolute shock. Tojo explains he collected it from Kagami. He tells her to use it to keep the shop running. Rei looks at him with deep devotion. She promises to entrust everything she has to him. He rests a gentle hand on her shoulder and smiles. Rei blushes softly. Tojo asks why she has been acting strange lately. He wonders if something happened that night. She touches her ear nervously and avoids eye contact. She insists nothing happened. Tojo lets it go. Then he asks her a favor. He wants to meet the younger girls she used to work with. Rei is surprised. Those girls work in the nightlife business. Tojo wants to hire them as arcade companions to sit beside customers and play games. Rei is stunned. He smiles and tells her to lead the way. They arrive at Dynasty Amusement.
Dynasty Amusement.
Inside a VIP lounge, Tojo relaxes with champagne. A group of very attractive young hostesses enters the room. Ri introduces Tojo to the gathered group. The hostesses bow politely. Tojo tells them to have a seat. The girls crowd around him on the couch. They promise to make sure he has a great time tonight. One leans in with a flirtatious smile. Tojo raises his hands. He clarifies he is not here for fun. He came to offer them jobs. A girl with a black bob says they will work anywhere as long as the pay is good. Tojo places 2 massive stacks of cash on the table. He tells them half is the booking fee for tonight. The other half is in advance. If they accept, they start tomorrow. If not, they keep tonight's cut and walk away. A blonde hostess asks if his business is a nightclub too. Tojo smiles. It is an arcade. They look puzzled. They wonder why an arcade needs hostesses. He explains he needs employees to enjoy games with the customers. He raises a finger. First, he guarantees they will earn more money than they do here. He raises a second finger. Second is pride. He promises no customer will ever be allowed to look down on them or mistreat them. The hostesses listen with genuinely touched expressions. Ray slams her beer down. She passionately endorses Tojo. She says he is the first man in this industry to give her hope. She urges them to leave the trashy nightlife trade behind and make real money together. The hostesses raise their bottles in a cheerful toast. They agree to follow him. Just then, the club manager opens the door. Ray looks over in surprise. The manager asks if she came back to work. She firmly rejects him. She left this industry behind. The manager apologizes to Tojo. He says they are short on staff and needs to take 2 of the girls for another table. Tojo calmly leaves the choice to the hostesses. The girls refuse. They do not want to entertain anyone else tonight. The manager scowls. The customer next door is a big spender. He points aggressively at them, promising generous pay. They still refuse. The manager loses it. He raises a hand to slap one of the girls. Tojo intercepts the blow instantly. He catches the manager's wrist mid-swing. The manager grimaces in pain. He tries to negotiate, saying the guy next door is too important to offend. Tojo stares him down with a dark intensity. He paid for these girls first. The manager warns him that a very high-status person is waiting. Tojo grabs a beer bottle and smashes it over the manager's head. The manager clutches his bleeding forehead, screaming in shock. Our guy glares with icy authority. He does not care who runs the place. In this room, his word is law. The bleeding manager backs out of the room, shouting threats. One of the girls urges Tojo to run. He refuses. He asks who backs this establishment. She nervously reveals the owner is Yoshimura Shuji. Tojo strokes his chin. That name sounds familiar. Ri asks if she should call for backup. Tojo waves her off. He doubts things will escalate that far. A heavy boot violently kicks open the door. A muscular, scarred gangster bursts in with bodyguards. The bleeding manager points directly at Tojo. The scarred gangster sneers. He asks Tojo if he has a death wish. Tojo tells him to watch his mouth before he makes sure he never opens it again. The gangster mocks the threat. He kicks the low table out of his way. He lunges forward with a massive punch. Tojo casually tilts his head, dodging it effortlessly. He catches the gangster's wrist and locks his arm in an iron grip. Tojo twists it painfully back, forcing the man to bend forward in agony. Another bodyguard charges in to help. Without looking, Tojo delivers a brutal backward kick straight into the attacker's chest. He grabs another bottle and swings it down. The glass shatters over the scarred gangster's head with explosive force. The gangster, Shuji, glares through the blood dripping down his face. Tojo holds him in a reverse lock, completely bored. He asks if that is all he has got. He shoves Shuji forward. Remember it well. My name is Gaku Tojo. Shuji stumbles and clutches his sore arm. The name does not ring a bell. He turns and roars at his men to go get all the guys downstairs with weapons. Ri pulls out her phone, looking concerned. Tojo gently pushes her hand down. He says their guys are tired and he can handle this himself. He steps toward Shuji with a calm smirk. He mentions Shuji's older brother, Shuhei. Shuji is furious that a stranger is casually dropping his brother's name. Tojo stands tall. He says even Shuhei would not dare talk to him like this. Shuji rushes forward. Tojo counters immediately with a crushing front kick to his chest. Shuji flies backward into the arms of his bodyguards. He grits his teeth. He vows Tojo is not leaving alive. A full squad of armed thugs with metal pipes rushes into the VIP room. Shuji orders them to break Tojo's legs. Tojo just draws a kitchen knife from his waistband. He tells them to think carefully. He warns them that laying a hand on him means Yoshida has declared war. Are you and your brother ready to die? A bodyguard swings a heavy bat down. Tojo sways back. He drives his knife straight through the man's hand and deep into the wooden bat handle. Blood sprays as he slices right through the shoulder. The thug collapses onto the floor, screaming in agony. Shuji and his men freeze in shock. Shuji decides to call his brother just to be safe. He pulls out his phone, glaring nervously at Tojo. Meanwhile, at a lavish villa, Shuhei watches his guard dog chase a rabbit across the courtyard. A bodyguard hands him a ringing phone. Shuhei answers casually. Shuji screams into the receiver that some guy just punched him. Shuhei is surprised someone actually laid a hand on his brother. He asks for a name. Shuji mentions Gaku Tojo. Shuhei's eye goes wide with horror. He screams at his brother for getting involved with him. Shuji complains about the rampage, but Shuhei cuts him off. He warns Shuji that Tojo is a mad dog who even Snake could not take down. Shuji yells back in wounded pride. His brother tells him to shut up. Pissing him off means both of them are finished. Shuji trembles in humiliation, refusing to let it slide. Shuhei roars furiously into the phone.
If you are so eager to die, do it alone. Do you know who killed Manjiro Yoshida? It was Tojo.
A cold sweat of sheer dread washes over Shuji. He finally understands the monster standing in front of him. He lowers the phone and commands all his guards to stand down. He turns around, trembling in absolute terror. Shuji bows deeply, forcing a terrified smile, and begs for forgiveness. The hostesses look on in sheer awe. Tojo issues his final terms. Starting tomorrow, the girls work for him. Shuji subserviently accepts without a single objection. Back at the villa, the Doberman brings a dead rabbit back to Shuhei. Shuhei's face contorts with simmering hatred. He swears he will make Tojo pay. The next night at Zenith Amusements, the place is exploding with energy. The floor is packed with male customers playing slots alongside the newly hired hostesses. A slot machine hits the jackpot with flashing lights. The silver-haired hostess smiles and claps for the winner. A crowd of guys wait eagerly just to sit next to her. Ray watches from the counter, smiling warmly at the massive success. Tetsuya walks up, and Ray teases him for slacking off. He scratches his neck and confesses he is completely captivated by one of the new girls. Ri pinches his ear playfully. She promises to introduce him properly once the rush dies down. Tetsuya gives an enthusiastic military salute, grinning from ear to ear. Elsewhere, a stylish man in a leather jacket walks into a room carrying a makeup kit. Tojo and his crew are waiting on the couch. Suzuki introduces the man as Tony, the most famous makeup artist in town. Tony warns them his fees are not cheap. Tojo says he will pay whatever it takes for a perfect job. Tojo hands him a thick envelope of cash. Tony peeks at the bundle inside. He lowers his sunglasses and asks who he is transforming. Tojo holds up a photo of the reporter Hei Hayashi. He points to one of his own subordinates. Tony studies the photo. He notes the facial structure is close, but the nose and eyes are totally different. Tojo asks if it is too hard. Tony takes offense instantly. He boasts he can build a brand new nose from scratch. Tojo smiles and leaves it in his hands. Tony gets to work applying complex prosthetics to the subordinate's face.
1 hour later.
The subordinate stands up. He sports silver hair and facial features identical to Hayashi. Tojo is impressed. He tells Tony he has one more favor to ask. Tony assumes Tojo wants makeup too. Tojo shakes his head. He wants Tony to make the double look like a corpse shot through the head. Tony refuses to ruin his masterpiece no matter how much money is offered. Tojo slams another massive stack of cash on the table. How about this? Tony changes his mind instantly. Meanwhile, at a lavish villa, Goda is meeting with Mayor Somiya. The mayor nervously tries to delay handing over the redevelopment project. The area is too high profile right now. Goda tells him not to underestimate him. No one opposes him once he takes charge. The mayor points out there are always reckless idiots like the reporter Hayashi snooping around. Goda smirks darkly behind his round glasses. This is exactly why he invited the mayor today. He gestures to the guards outside. Muto walks in, escorting the disguised Hayashi double. Goda casually asks if he has any last words. The double plays his role perfectly. He curses Goda and swears someone will expose his crimes. Goda chuckles. Muto raises a handgun directly to the back of the double's head. Mayor Somiya panics. He jumps out of his chair, terrified they are going to kill a man right in front of him. Goda asks if the mayor wants him dead too. The mayor admits he does. Goda waves his hand. He orders Muto to do it in the next room so the mayor does not get blood on him. The double yells final curses as he is pushed out the door. In the hallway, Muto aims his gun with a cold grin. A loud gunshot echoes through the building. The mayor flinches in terror. Goda leans on his walking stick, smiling pleasantly. He tells the mayor his biggest headache is gone. Muto walks back in and reports it is done. Gata orders him to clean up the body immediately and leave no evidence. In the hallway, Muto points two men in surgical masks toward the adjacent room. Inside, the real Hayashi is waiting in disguise. The two men enter. One removes his mask to reveal Tojo. He shushes the reporter and promises to get him out right now. The body double removes his glasses, marveling at the resemblance. Tojo orders them to swap clothes. Muto leans against the doorframe. Amazed, Tojo actually came up with a plan like this. The real Hayashi puts on a doctor's coat, while the double puts on Hayashi's black shirt. Suzuki holds up a bucket of fake blood and tells the double to bear with it. He splashes the entire bucket directly over the double's head. A heavy, blood-stained sheet is draped over him. Tojo, Suzuki, and Hayashi wheel the fake corpse down the hallway right past Muto. If you want to take over the city, you have to play the corrupt politicians like a fiddle. Mayor Sumya and Goda stare down at a blood-stained gurney. The face of the body double is ruined, and they buy the illusion completely. Gata orders his doctor to clean up the mess, having no idea that doctor is actually Tojo in a surgical mask. Meanwhile, at the local train station, the real reporter, Hei Hayashi, hands over his ticket. Yuji claps Tojo on the shoulder, giving our boy full credit for the fake execution plan. Hayashi knows he can never return to this city, but he leaves Tojo a parting gift. He hands over a physical key. It unlocks a basement in his parents' house containing hard evidence of every crime committed by Snake and the corrupt mayor. Tojo promises to put it to good use as they watch the reporter walk away to a new life. Yuji asks if this means they are going after the political elites too. Tojo says yes, but first, they have a turf war to win. They return to Zenith Amusements. Business is absolutely booming, with a massive line of customers wrapping around the block. That kind of money attracts pests. Snake approaches from across the street with his top lieutenant and a woman in a green dress. Tojo glares and asks if they are here for a fight. Snake claims he is here to talk business. He points out that they are just cannibalizing their own profits, so he makes an offer. Close down Zenith and Snake will hand over 30% of Dynasty Arcade profits every month. Tojo laughs right in his scarred face. Snake drops the smile and asks exactly how much he wants. 100% of the profits. The white-haired lieutenant screams at the disrespect. Snake realizes negotiations are dead. The woman in the green dress calls Tojo a clueless brat. Snake steps into this dude's personal space. He threatens to send thugs to crush the arcade and blame it on random violence. Tojo does not even blink, promising to retaliate using the exact same method. Snake tells him not to regret it and walks away. Yuji warns that they need to be careful, but Tetsuya drops a massive piece of intel. That woman in the green dress is named Koyuki. She is the girlfriend of a man named Furukawa, the real owner of Dynasty Amusements. Snake just seized control of the daily operations and stopped paying Furukawa his cut. Tojo smirks, realizing the enemy of his enemy is his friend. Meanwhile, at a massive European-style mansion, Snake stands before the elderly Furukawa. He claims the arcade ran a 40 million deficit last month and demands Furukawa cover it. The old man is tired of bleeding money and asks Koyuki to verify the account books. Koyuki lies right to his face. She confirms the massive deficit and blames it on Tojo stealing their customers. Furukawa caves but warns them this is the last time he covers their losses. Snake bows mockingly. Outside the mansion, Snake grabs Koyuki by the waist. They joke about giving the old man a heart attack. Koyuki just wants him dead so they can steal the inheritance. That night, Furukawa sits alone in his dim lounge. His butler announces a late-night visitor, and Tojo strolls right into the mansion with his crew. Furukawa demands to know why his enemy is in his house. Tojo tells the old man to stop lying to himself. He knows Snake is sucking him dry, so he offers to take Snake out completely, but our guy pretends to leave when Furukawa acts stubborn. The old man panics and shouts for him to wait. He tells Tojo to take a seat. Furukawa wants to be on the winning side, but asks how a newcomer can possibly defeat Snake. Tojo taps his temple, revealing he already has the evidence to crush Snake from the shadows. Furukawa is terrified of making the wrong choice. He tried to have Snake killed years ago, and his assassins ended up as snake food. Tojo leans in close and reminds the old man that he crawled back from the dead, and if Furukawa refuses to help, his life ends tonight. The old man finally yields and asks what Tojo wants. 20 million. The next day, two thugs stare up at the Zenith Amusements sign. One is an older guy in a floral shirt. The other is Kiritani, a young punk secretly on Tojo payroll. The older thug claims he used to make these exact slot machines and knows a 100% win exploit. Kiritani waits outside. The scammer walks in and starts feeding coins, telling the hostess to shut up when she explains the rules. Across the street, Tetsuya complains about handing over 20 million to Furukawa so easily. Tojo shuts him down, reminding him they have to act like real business partners now. Inside the arcade, a massive crowd gathers. Tojo walks over to investigate the commotion. The older thug just hit a massive jackpot of silver coins. Tojo places a hand on his shoulder and asks him to stop. The scammer refuses and gets loud. He accuses Tojo of trying to stiff him on the winnings. Tetsuya steps up to search the guy for cheat devices, but Tojo holds him back, loudly declaring there is no problem and ordering a payout of 2.6 million. Tetsuya is stunned while the hostess whispers that the guy was tapping the buttons weirdly. Tojo ignores it and opens a heavy briefcase on the floor. When a customer wins, it is only right to pay them every single cent. The crowd goes absolutely wild. Tojo shuts down the machine for maintenance but promises everyone else that clean wins get paid in full. The customers cheer his name. Then Bro leans in close to the scammer and whispers that he knows it was a cheat. He lets him keep the money under 2 conditions. Never tell anyone about the exploit and never step foot in Zenith again. The sweating scammer agrees and runs out with the briefcase. Tetsuya wants to chase him down, but Yuji smiles and says Tojo already pulled the strings. Out in the alley, Kiritani greets the winner. The scammer hands over a cut of the cash. He greedily asks if there are any other arcades nearby to hit before he skips town. Kiritani slyly points him straight toward Dynasty Amusements. He warns that the manager there is dangerous, but the scammer scoffs. They said the same thing about Tojo, and he paid out instantly. Deep inside Dynasty, Snake is busy making out with a blonde hostess on a leather couch. A frantic knock ruins the mood. Snake screams at the door as his lieutenant bursts in panicking. Someone is up 8 million at the slots. Snake jumps up and asks if Tojo is behind this, but the lieutenant explains the guy won big at Zenith yesterday and got paid normally.
He probably got scared and had no choice but to hand over the cash. But I am different.
Out on the floor, the older thug is hitting jackpot after jackpot. Gold tokens flood the tray as the crowd parts in terror. Snake approaches and asks how much he is winning. The scammer tells him to get lost without even turning around. Big mistake. A thug violently kicks his stool out from under him. The scammer hits the floor hard, yelling that he was just playing normally. Snake crouches over him and asks who sent him here. The scammer demands his money.
But I have no plan to pay even a single penny to a cheater.
The scammer screams for proof. Snake delivers a brutal backhand slap across his face, declaring his word is the only proof needed. A thug steps up with a wooden bat. The scammer leaps up and catches the swing barehanded. He rips off his floral shirt, flexing a scarred torso and challenging the entire room.
Fine then. Today, I will teach you to fear me.
His lieutenant begs him to let the staff handle it so they do not catch a murder charge. Snake tells him to stay out of it because he needs to relieve some stress. He marches straight at the shirtless man. The scammer panics, grabs a heavy wooden stool, and smashes it directly over his head. The wood splinters into 1,000 pieces. Snake does not even flinch. He just grins through the blood running down his face. The scammer freezes in pure horror. Snake reaches out with lightning speed, grabbing the man by the throat and hoisting him entirely off the floor with one hand. Hanging in the air, the scammer chokes and denies cheating. Snake wins back his free fist. He drives a devastating blow deep into his ribs, then unleashes a rapid barrage of heavy body shots. Blood sprays from his mouth. The lieutenant begs Snake to stop before he kills him. Snake drops the unconscious, broken body to the floor. The crowd is dead silent. A technician runs up shouting that the machine settings are completely destroyed. Snake smiles and draws a jagged combat knife from his belt. He crouches over the bleeding man as the scammer scrambles backwards screaming for help.
Do you have accomplices outside? Drag them all in here together.
Meanwhile, out in the dark alley, Kiritani checks his watch, having no idea the trap just snapped shut. Only 6% of you are actually subscribed. If you enjoyed this, consider liking and subscribing. It is free and you can change your mind whenever you want.